When my daughter-in-law slipped poison into my champagne at my own celebration, I switched our glasses without saying a word. Minutes later, her own mother collapsed instead of me. That's when I realized family ties can be the deadliest noose of all. If you're watching this, subscribe now and tell me in the comments if you've ever discovered someone close to you had a dark side you never imagined. They say lightning doesn't strike twice, but I've learned fate has a twisted sense of humor. First came the lottery win, $100 million at 60 years old. Then came the revelation that my own family was plotting against me. One was a blessing. The other nearly killed me. Literally. My name is Eleanor Winters. For most of my life, I've been invisible. A secretary who typed faster than she spoke. A wife who was left for a younger model after 23 years of marriage. A mother whose only son married a woman who treated me like something stuck to the bottom of her designer shoes. That's who I was. Until the numbers changed everything. I remember staring at the ticket that evening, my reading glasses perched on my nose, comparing each digit one by one with trembling hands. 6 numbers that transformed me from the woman nobody noticed to someone everybody suddenly wanted to know. "You've got to be kidding me," I whispered to my empty apartment, my voice echoing off the walls of the place I'd downsized to after Arthur left me for his dental hygienist. The place my son Michael never visited because Vanessa, his wife, said the neighborhood gave her anxiety. My first call was to Michael. I needed to share this joy with someone, and despite everything, he was my blood. "Mom." His voice sounded distracted. I could hear Vanessa in the background asking who was calling at this hour. It was only 7:30. "Michael, something incredible has happened. I won the lottery. The big one." Silence. Then, is this some kind of joke?
"No, sweetheart.
$100 million. I checked the numbers 5 times. The line went quiet again. Then I heard muffled voices, a hand covering the receiver. When Michael returned, his tone had changed completely. "Mom, that's amazing. We're stunned." I heard Vanessa's voice clearer now, suddenly interested. "Let me talk to her, Michael." "Eleanor." Her voice was honey and warmth, nothing like the cool dismissal I'd grown accustomed to over the 7 years she'd been married to my son. "This is incredible news. We're coming over right now to celebrate with you." That was the first warning sign I ignored. In 7 years, Vanessa had never once suggested visiting my apartment. She'd made Michael host me at their home for holidays, where I sat at the far end of their glossy dining table like a tolerated guest rather than family. Within an hour, they were at my door with a bottle of champagne I knew they kept for special occasions. Michael hugged me, the first real embrace I'd felt from him in years. But it was Vanessa who disturbed me. She kept touching my arm, my shoulder, calling me Mom instead of Eleanor for the first time ever. "We need to help you manage this," she said, her eyes gleaming under my cheap lighting fixtures she'd once called depressing. "Michael knows a financial advisor. Top-notch. We'll call him first thing tomorrow." I nodded, dazed by their sudden attention, by the champagne bubbles, by the dizzying reality of my new fortune. "And you can't stay here anymore," Vanessa continued, gesturing around my modest living room with a sweep of her manicured hand. "It's not safe, not with this kind of money. You'll move in with us until we find you something suitable." That night, as they left, Michael kissed my cheek while Vanessa hugged me so tightly I could smell her expensive perfume. It was intoxicating, this sudden rush of family closeness I'd craved for so long. "Sleep tight, Mom," she said, squeezing my hands. "Everything changes tomorrow." She had no idea how right she was. The next weeks passed in a blur. Lawyers, accountants, financial advisors, most recommended by Vanessa, all of them treating me with a deference I'd never experienced. I moved into Michael and Vanessa's guest suite, which suddenly became Mom's wing, according to Vanessa, when she showed it to her friends. "We insist," Michael had said when I hesitated. "Family sticks together in times like these." Family. The word warmed me even as it confused me. Where had this family been when I spent last Christmas alone because they'd gone to Aspen with Vanessa's parents? Where was this concern when I'd had minor surgery last year and had to take a taxi home from the hospital? But I pushed those thoughts away.
People change.
Money changes circumstances. Perhaps this was our second chance. One evening, about a month after my win, I overheard them arguing in their bedroom. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but their voices carried down the hallway as I returned from getting a glass of water. She's talking about a foundation, Vanessa. Charitable trusts. That's millions gone. Calm down. Vanessa's voice was low, controlled. She's excited. Let her talk. Maxwell says these things take time to set up. We have time. But what if she won't?
Trust me.
Your mother has spent her entire life being overlooked. She's desperate for approval, for inclusion. I've got her exactly where we need her. I froze. The water in my glass suddenly as cold as the feeling spreading through my chest. I just don't want to end up with nothing, Michael said, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. We've got debts you don't even know about, and with the new house. Listen to me, Vanessa cut in. In 6 months, we'll have access to everything. Every single
dollar.
Just keep smiling and nodding at her ridiculous ideas about helping homeless people or whatever cause she's fixated on this week. I backed away silently, my heart hammering against my ribs. The water in my glass trembled, tiny ripples reflecting the shattered image of the family reunion I'd fooled myself into believing. That night, I made a decision. I called James Harrington, a lawyer I'd found on my own, not from Vanessa's carefully curated list of experts. Mrs. Winters. He greeted me the next morning in his modest office downtown. What can I do for you today? I need to protect myself, I said simply, for my family. James was different from the slick attorneys Vanessa had introduced me to. He listened more than he spoke, his gray eyes serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. When I finished explaining my concerns, he nodded slowly. Unfortunately, Mrs. Winters, sudden wealth often reveals people's true characters, especially family members. What can I do? They're already making plans. Vanessa has me scheduled to meet with their estate planner next week. James leaned forward. Cancel that meeting. In fact, I suggest we move quickly on several fronts. First, we need to secure your assets in structures that protect them from others' control. Second, I recommend you find your own residence immediately. But won't that cause suspicion? They've been so attentive. Mrs. Winters, with all due respect, that's precisely what concerns me. Based on what you've shared, their sudden change of heart coincides perfectly with your financial windfall. I felt tears building. He's my only child. James's expression softened, which is exactly why we need to proceed carefully. If your concerns are unfounded, no harm done. But if they're not, he let the implication hang in the air. 2 days later, I told Michael and Vanessa I'd found a penthouse apartment downtown and would be moving in immediately. But Mom, Michael protested, his face falling in a way that still made my heart twist. We've been enjoying having you here, haven't we, Van? Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course. But I understand you wanting your own space. Just promise you'll let us help with security arrangements. There are so many people who might try to take advantage. The irony wasn't lost on me. My new penthouse became my sanctuary and my war room. With James's guidance, I began structuring my wealth in ways that protected it, and me. A significant portion went into an irrevocable trust for charitable causes I cared about. Another portion was secured in investments that couldn't be touched for a minimum of 15 years. You're being awfully secretive, Vanessa commented one afternoon as she unexpectedly dropped by, her eyes scanning my paperwork before I could slide it into a drawer. What are all these meetings you're having without us? Just getting my affairs in order, I replied, offering her tea with a steady hand that surprised even me. You know Michael worries about you making financial decisions without guidance, she said, her tone gentle but her eyes sharp. He just wants to protect you. That's sweet, I answered, matching her false warmth. But I've hired some excellent advisors. Not that James person? Her nose wrinkled slightly. Michael looked him up. He's hardly the caliber of advisor you need for this level of wealth. I simply smiled. The tea's getting cold. As weeks passed, I noticed a shift in their strategy. Invitations became more frequent. Michael called daily. Vanessa began including me in her social circle, introducing me as my amazing mother-in-law who's doing such important philanthropic work. It was during one of these social gatherings at their home that I overheard something that turned my blood to ice. I'd stepped away to use the bathroom and was returning when I heard Vanessa speaking to someone in Michael's study. The door was ajar, and I glimpsed her speaking to a man I didn't recognize. "The problem is she's become suspicious," Vanessa was saying. "The direct approach isn't working fast enough. The clock is ticking on those debts," the man replied, his voice low. "Cruz isn't the type to offer extensions." "I know that," Vanessa snapped. "If we could just get her to sign the joint investment account documents." "You said that weeks ago. Your husband's signature isn't enough if the old lady won't play ball." I pressed myself against the wall, my heart racing. "Don't call her that," Vanessa said, though there was no real defense in her tone. "And don't worry. I'm planning something special. A celebration. Very public, very sentimental. She won't be able to say no when I present the paperwork there." "And if she does?" There was a pause. "Then we moved to contingency plans." I didn't wait to hear more. I slipped away and rejoined the party, my mind whirling. What debts were they talking about? Who was Cruz? And what contingency plans did Vanessa have in mind? The next morning, I called James and recounted everything. "This is concerning," he said, his usual measured tone replaced with urgency. "I think we need to accelerate our plans. And possibly involve the authorities." "No," I said firmly. "Not yet. I need more information. And I'm not ready to turn my son over to the police." "Mrs. Winters, Eleanor, I understand your reluctance, but you may be in danger." "I know," I whispered. "But he's still my boy. Somewhere inside, under her influence. I need to know how deep this goes before I make any decisions." James sighed. "At least let me arrange for private security." I agreed to that compromise. Within days, a discreet security team was monitoring my building and accompanying me on outings, though I requested they maintain enough distance that Michael and Vanessa wouldn't notice. It was barely a week later when Vanessa called with the invitation. "Eleanor, I've been thinking. We haven't properly celebrated your amazing good fortune as a family," she gushed through the phone. "I'm planning a spectacular party. Just family and close friends at first, then a bigger charity gala later. We need to show the world who Eleanor Winters really is." My pulse quickened. This must be the celebration she'd mentioned. "That's very thoughtful, Vanessa, but I'm not sure." "I won't take no for an answer. You deserve this. After everything you've been through, Arthur leaving, all those years struggling alone. This is your moment to shine." The manipulation was so transparent now that I knew what to look for. The reference to my ex-husband. The reminder of my struggles. The appeal to vanity. "When were you thinking?" I asked, buying time. 3 weeks from Saturday. I've already spoken to the Belmont about their grand ballroom. It's going to be magical, Eleanor. Trust me.
Trust.
Such a small word for something so precious and so easily shattered. All right, I agreed. That sounds lovely. After hanging up, I immediately called James. "I need everything you can find on someone named Cruz. And I want to know exactly what kind of debts my son and his wife are hiding." What James uncovered chilled me to the bone. Michael and Vanessa were underwater, not just financially, but dangerously so. The beautiful home, the luxury cars, the exotic vacations, all financed by loans they couldn't repay. But worse than the bank debts were the ones owed to a man named Victor Cruz, a private lender with connections to organized crime. They borrowed $2 million from this man 8 months ago, James explained, his face grim as we sat in my secured living room. The interest rates are criminal, literally. And based on what my investigator found, Cruz has given them a deadline. How much do they owe now? With the compounded interest? Nearly $3 million. And Cruz has made it clear there are no further extensions. I closed my eyes, thinking of my son, My little boy who once cried when he accidentally stepped on a caterpillar, now entangled with loan sharks and criminals. The deadline, I whispered. When is it? James hesitated. 2 days after the party Vanessa is planning for you. The pieces fell into place with terrible clarity. The sudden affection, the rushed timeline, the contingency plans. She's desperate, I murmured. They both are. Desperate people do desperate things, Eleanor. You need to cancel this party and distance yourself immediately. We have enough evidence to take to the authorities. But something held me back. A mother's instinct, perhaps. Or maybe just 6 decades of being underestimated. No, I said finally. The party goes forward, but with some adjustments. The night of the party arrived. The Belmont Hotel's grand ballroom transformed into a glittering fantasy. Chandeliers cast diamond light across marble floors. Floral arrangements towered from every table. A string quartet played softly in the corner. I'd arrived early at James's insistence, allowing his security team to survey the space and staff. They remained inconspicuous but present, dressed as service personnel or guests. You look stunning, Vanessa exclaimed when she arrived, air-kissing my cheeks. She herself was a vision in a crimson gown that must have cost thousands. Money they didn't have. Everyone important is coming. I've even arranged for a photographer from Social Scene magazine. Michael hugged me, his embrace tight, almost desperate. You deserve this, Mom, he whispered, and for a moment I saw a flicker of my real son in his eyes. The guests began arriving, some I knew, many I didn't. Vanessa had invited her entire social circle, people who'd never given me a second glance before my windfall. Now they cluster around me, complimenting my timeless style and asking about my philanthropic vision. Vanessa stayed close, guiding me through the crowd, glancing occasionally at her watch. She seemed nervous beneath her polished exterior, her laughter a touch too loud, her gestures slightly too animated. Your mother arrived, I noted, seeing an elegant woman in her 70s enter the ballroom. Gloria Hamilton Pierce, Vanessa's mother, was old money and made sure everyone knew it. She'd always treated me with thinly veiled disdain. Yes, Mother insisted on coming when she heard about the party, Vanessa said, her smile tightening. She wants to congratulate you personally. Gloria made her way to us, her expression a masterclass in condescension masked as delight. Eleanor, she said, taking my hands in her cold ones. How fortunate you must feel. Such a blessing at your age. Gloria, I replied warmly. So wonderful you could attend. Vanessa has outdone herself, hasn't she? Indeed. My daughter has always had a flair for recognizing opportunities. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I wondered if Gloria knew. If she understood exactly what her daughter was capable of. The evening progressed with dinner, champagne, and increasingly effusive toasts to my good fortune. Through it all, I watched Vanessa's tension grow. She kept glancing toward the entrance, checking her phone discreetly. Finally, she leaned close to me. I've planned a special toast.
Just a few moments from now.
It's going to be so moving, Eleanor. A true celebration of you. I nodded, my pulse quickening. I'll look forward to it. She squeezed my arm and moved away, conferring with the event coordinator, then with the waitstaff. I noticed her direct a server to bring a specific tray of champagne flutes. James appeared at my side, disguised as a distinguished guest. Everything all right, he murmured. We're about to find out, I whispered back. Stay close during the toast. Minutes later, Vanessa clinked her glass, calling for attention. The room quieted as she stood in the center, a spotlight finding her as if by magic. Friends, family, honored guests, she began, her voice carrying across the ballroom. We're gathered tonight to celebrate an extraordinary woman and an extraordinary event. My mother-in-law, Eleanor Winters, has shown us all that life can change in an instant, that perseverance and faith are rewarded. She gestured for me to join her. I rose, moving carefully toward her, aware of every eye in the room. Eleanor has always been the quiet strength in our family, Vanessa continued, the life flowing effortlessly from her lips. Always putting others first, never seeking the spotlight, And now, fate has blessed her, blessed all of us, with a new chapter. A server approached with a tray of champagne. I recognized him as one Vanessa had spoken to earlier. He offered the tray first to Vanessa, who selected a glass, then to me. I noticed immediately that one glass was positioned slightly apart from the others. Before we toast, Vanessa said, I have a surprise. A special announcement and a gift. She nodded to Michael, who stepped forward with an envelope. My son looked pale, a sheen of sweat visible on his forehead despite the room's perfect temperature. Mom, he said, his voice catching. Vanessa and I have been working with some amazing financial experts. We've created a family investment trust, something that will secure your legacy, our legacy, for generations. He handed me the envelope with trembling fingers. All it needs is your signature. Tonight, in front of everyone who loves you. I took the envelope, but didn't open it. Instead, I smiled warmly at my son, then at Vanessa, whose perfect mask couldn't quite hide the desperation in her eyes. What a thoughtful surprise, I said. A toast first, and then I'll review these papers. Relief flooded Vanessa's face.
Yes.
A toast. She raised her glass. To Eleanor, to family, to new beginnings. The crowd echoed her words. I raised my glass as well, keeping my eyes on Vanessa. And then I did something she never expected. As I brought the glass toward my lips, I stumbled slightly, just enough to bump against Vanessa. In the brief moment of contact, I switched our champagne flutes.
Oh.
Excuse my clumsiness. I laughed. These heels are higher than I'm used to. Vanessa's laugh was tight. No harm done. To new beginnings. She raised the glass, my original glass, and drank deeply. I pretended to sip, watching her over the rim. For a moment, nothing happened. The crowd dispersed, returning to their conversations. Vanessa's mother approached us, her own champagne in hand. Well, that was quite moving, Gloria commented dryly. Now, about this investment trust, Eleanor. I hope you'll have your own advisors review it before signing anything. Even family can make mistakes in financial matters. Before I could respond, Vanessa swayed slightly beside me. Mother, she said, her voice suddenly hoarse. I don't feel. Gloria frowned. Vanessa? Are you all right? You look flushed. Vanessa clutched at her throat, her eyes widening in panic. The champagne flute slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The noise drew every eye in the room. Can't breathe. She gasped before her knees buckled. Gloria caught her daughter as she collapsed, crying out in alarm. Help! Something's wrong with my daughter. Chaos erupted. Guests rushed forward. Someone shouted for a doctor. Michael fell to his knees beside his wife, his face contorted with fear. Vanessa. Van, what's happening? What's wrong? His panicked eyes found mine. Mom, call an ambulance. I stood perfectly still in the center of the storm, watching as my daughter-in-law convulsed on the floor, her red dress spreading around her like a pool of blood against the white marble. Already done, sir, said one of James's security team, stepping forward with professional calm. Paramedics are on their way. Gloria cradled Vanessa's head, her aristocratic composure shattered. She was fine just a moment ago. This makes no sense. But I knew exactly what was happening. I'd seen Vanessa's hand move over my champagne glass, the quick motion as she emptied something into it. Whatever she'd intended for me was now coursing through her system instead. The paramedics arrived with remarkable speed. James had made sure they were on standby and pushed through the crowd of shocked onlookers. They worked efficiently, stabilizing Vanessa, loading her onto a stretcher. We need to know what she ingested, one paramedic said, looking around the stunned crowd. Michael shook his head frantically. Nothing. Just champagne. The same champagne we all had. Not quite the same, I thought silently. As they rushed Vanessa out, Gloria turned to me, her face ashen. I'm going with her. This is unbelievable. I nodded sympathetically. Of course. I'll come to the hospital as soon as I can. Michael looked torn, his gaze darting between me and the departing stretcher bearing his wife. Mom, Go, I said gently. She needs you. He squeezed my hand and rushed after the paramedics. The remaining guests stood in shocked clusters, whispers rippling through the ballroom. The perfect celebration had transformed into a scene of medical emergency and confusion. James appeared at my side. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "But I need you to do something immediately. Name it. Contact the police. Tell them we need officers at the hospital. And then call this number." I handed him a card with a name I'd been saving for exactly this moment. Detective Marquez. Tell her it's time. As James moved away to make the calls, I stood alone in the glittering ballroom, surrounded by luxury and lies. The envelope with the investment trust paperwork was still in my hand, paperwork that would have signed away my fortune, my security, my very life. I slipped it into my purse, evidence for what was to come. The string quartet had stopped playing. The champagne had stopped flowing. The celebration had ended, but something else had begun. The reckoning I'd been preparing for since the moment I overheard Vanessa's true intentions. As I gathered my things to head to the hospital, one of the waiters approached hesitantly. "Ma'am, I'm sorry about what happened, but the gentleman said you'd want this." He handed me a small glass vial, carefully sealed in a plastic bag. He retrieved it from under the ladies' table. I recognized it immediately as the container Vanessa must have emptied into my champagne. James's security team had been thorough. "Thank you," I said, slipping it into my purse beside the envelope. "This is very important." Outside, my driver waited with the car door open. The night air felt cool against my skin after the heated chaos of the ballroom. "To the hospital?" he asked. "Yes," I replied, settling into the back seat. "And hurry. I believe things are about to get very interesting." As the car pulled away from the curb, I looked back at the Belmont Hotel, its grand facade glowing against the night sky. Inside those walls, I'd finally seen the truth of my family laid bare. The son who chose money over morality. The daughter-in-law who chose murder over patience. But they had underestimated me for the last time. They thought my age made me vulnerable, my love made me blind, my loneliness made me desperate. They were wrong. They didn't know I'd survived 6 decades in a world that tried to make me invisible. They didn't know that being overlooked had taught me to observe, to wait, to plan. And they certainly didn't know that I'd been 3 steps ahead of them since the moment I heard Vanessa's voice through that bedroom door. The hospital loomed ahead, its emergency entrance blazing with lights. Somewhere inside, Vanessa fought against the very poison she'd intended for me. Somewhere inside, my son faced questions he couldn't answer. And somewhere inside, the truth waited to be revealed. I straightened my shoulders as the car stopped at the entrance. It was time to show them exactly who Eleanor Winters really was. And I promised myself, as I stepped out into the night, that by morning, everyone would know. The hospital's fluorescent lights cast everyone in a sickly pallor as I walked through the automatic doors. My heels clicked against the polished floor, echoing in the hushed emergency waiting area. Several guests from the party had already arrived, huddled in corners, their evening finery looking absurdly out of place against the stark medical backdrop. If you're still watching this story unfold, hit that subscribe button now. Have you ever walked into a room knowing you were about to change everything? Tell me in the comments below. A nurse directed me to a private waiting area where I found Michael pacing, his tuxedo jacket discarded, his tie loosened. Gloria sat rigidly in a chair, her back straight despite the circumstances, her fingers clutching her designer handbag like a lifeline. "Mom." Michael rushed to me, his face drawn with worry. "They won't tell us anything. They took her away and..." His voice broke. "What happened?" 1 minute she was fine, and then I placed a comforting hand on his arm. "I'm sure the doctors are doing everything they can." Gloria's eyes narrowed as she watched our exchange. "This is most irregular," she said, her aristocratic accent more pronounced under stress. "Perfectly healthy people don't simply collapse. Something must have caused this." "I agree," I said calmly, meeting her gaze. Before she could respond, the double doors opened, and a doctor in scrubs approached us. Family of Vanessa Pierce Winters? Yes, Michael and Gloria answered simultaneously, both stepping forward.
I'm Dr. Reeves.
We've stabilized your wife, Mr. Winters, but her condition is still serious. She's experiencing symptoms consistent with some form of poisoning. Poisoning? Michael's face drained of color. That's impossible.
She only had champagne.
The same champagne everyone was drinking. Dr. Reeves frowned. We've taken blood samples for toxicology, but given the rapid onset and severity of symptoms, I've already alerted hospital security and the police. The police? Gloria stood abruptly. Surely that's premature. This must be some sort of allergic reaction. Standard procedure in cases like this, ma'am, the doctor replied. They'll want to speak with all of you. As if on cue, the waiting room doors opened again. Detective Elena Marquez entered, accompanied by 2 uniformed officers. I recognized her immediately from our previous meetings, a compact woman with intelligent eyes and an air of quiet authority. Mrs. Winters, she nodded to me, then turned to Michael and Gloria.
I'm Detective Marquez.
I understand there was an incident at the Belmont Hotel this evening. My daughter collapsed, Gloria said stiffly. A medical emergency, nothing more. Marquez's expression remained neutral. The hospital has reported suspected poisoning, Mrs. Hamilton Pierce. That falls under our jurisdiction. Michael swayed slightly. Poisoning?
But how?
Why would anyone want to harm Vanessa? That's what we need to determine, Marquez replied. She gestured to the seating area. I'd like to speak with each of you separately, starting with you, Mr. Winters. Gloria began to protest, but Marquez cut her off with practiced politeness. This is standard procedure. Mrs. Hamilton Pierce, one of my officers will stay with you. Mrs. Winters, if you could wait in the adjacent room? I nodded and followed the second officer to a smaller consultation room. Through the window in the door, I could see Michael being led away by Marquez, his shoulders slumped, his steps unsteady. The officer assigned to me, Officer Chen according to her nameplate, stood quietly by the door. Can I get you anything, ma'am? Water. No, thank you, I replied, settling into a chair.
I've fine.
But I wasn't fine. As the adrenaline of the evening began to ebb, the full weight of what had happened, what I had done, settled over me like a heavy cloak. My own daughter-in-law had tried to murder me, and in return, I had redirected her poison back to her. Was I any better than she was? The thought haunted me as I waited, watching the minutes tick by on the wall clock. I had acted in self-defense, yes, but I had also acted with calculation, with forethought. I had seen the danger and turned it back on its source. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Evidence secured. Second team at your penthouse retrieving files. All proceeding as planned. I closed my eyes briefly. There was no turning back now. The machinery I had set in motion was running at full speed. Almost 40 minutes passed before the door opened again and Detective Marquez entered. She dismissed Officer Chen with a nod, then took the seat across from me. Mrs. Winters, she began, her voice professional, but not unkind. Your son seems genuinely shocked by tonight's events. I believe he is, I replied. But you're not, she observed, studying me closely. I met her gaze steadily.
No, detective.
I'm not. Marquez leaned forward slightly. When you contacted my office 3 weeks ago with concerns about possible threats to your safety, you mentioned suspicions about your daughter-in-law but provided no specifics. Has that changed? I reached into my purse and withdrew the plastic bag containing the vial. This was retrieved from under Vanessa's table at the party. I believe you'll find it contains whatever substance caused her condition. Marquez's eyebrows rose as she carefully took the bag. And why would your daughter-in-law have this? Because she intended it for me. I kept my voice even. I saw her empty it into my champagne glass just before the toast. The detective's expression didn't change, but her posture shifted slightly. That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Winters.
I'm aware.
If what you're suggesting is true, how did she end up ingesting it instead? I folded my hands in my lap. I switched our glasses when she wasn't looking. For a long moment, Marquez said nothing, simply regarding me with those penetrating eyes. Then she asked, "Why not just refuse to drink or alert security?" It was a fair question, one I had asked myself repeatedly in the dark hours of planning. Would you believe me if I said it was instinct? A split-second decision? No, she replied honestly. I wouldn't. Everything I've learned about you in the past 3 weeks suggests you don't make split-second decisions, Mrs. Winters. You calculate. You prepare. You anticipate. I smiled faintly. Then you know why I'm here, instead of lying in that hospital bed. Or worse. Marquez placed the evidence bag carefully in her jacket pocket. What else can you tell me? I withdrew the envelope from my purse. This is what they wanted me to sign tonight. It appears to be an investment trust agreement, but I suspect it's something quite different. She took the envelope, but didn't open it. Your son claims it's a legitimate financial arrangement to protect your lottery winnings. My son is either complicit or deceived, I said, the words painful even as I uttered them. Either way, that document should be examined by forensic accountants. It will be. Marquez stood. I need to continue my investigation. Mrs. Winters, I strongly advise you not to leave town. I have no intention of going anywhere, detective. She paused at the door. One more thing. Did you know what was in the vial? What would happen when your daughter-in-law drank from that glass? The question hung in the air between us, weighted with implication.
No, y answered truthfully.
I only knew it wasn't meant for her. After Marquez left, I remained seated, the gravity of the situation settling around me like dust after an explosion. Outside, through the small window, I could see Michael slumped in a chair, his head in his hands. Gloria was speaking to one of the officers, her gestures becoming increasingly agitated. My family, or what remained of it. My phone buzzed again. Another text from James. Cruz's associates on the move. Security team alerted. Stay where you are. A chill ran through me. I hadn't considered that Victor Cruz might take immediate action once he learned of Vanessa's hospitalization. The deadline for their debt was rapidly approaching, and with Vanessa incapacitated and under police scrutiny, their plan to access my money had imploded. I texted back. Michael? James's response was immediate. Under watch. Safe for now. Despite everything, relief flooded through me. Whatever my son had done, whatever role he had played in this nightmare, I couldn't bear the thought of him in danger. The door opened again, and I expected to see Detective Marquez returning. Instead, Gloria Hamilton Pierce entered, closing the door firmly behind her. Eleanor, she said, her voice ice-cold. What have you done? I straightened in my chair. I'm not sure what you mean, Gloria. She moved closer, her perfectly coiffed hair and designer dress incongruous with the fury in her eyes. Don't play innocent with me. The police are treating this as an attempted murder. They're saying Vanessa was poisoned. Poisoned? That's what the doctor believes. I replied calmly. And you, she demanded. What do you believe happened? I studied her face, searching for any sign that she knew what her daughter had planned. I believe Vanessa had something in her champagne that wasn't meant to be there. Gloria's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting my daughter tried to poison herself? That's absurd. No, I said softly. I'm suggesting she tried to poison me. The color drained from Gloria's face. For a moment, genuine shock seemed to register in her eyes. Then her aristocratic mask slipped back into place. You're delusional, she hissed. Age and sudden wealth have clearly affected your mind. Vanessa would never. Vanessa and Michael owe $3 million to a loan shark named Victor Cruz, I interrupted. The deadline is in 2 days. They were desperate, Gloria. Desperate enough to try to eliminate me and gain control of my money. She stared at me, her composure cracking. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do, I countered. I think you've known about their financial troubles for some time. Maybe you even encouraged Vanessa to pursue more direct methods of solving them. Gloria's hand moved so quickly, I barely saw it coming. The slap stung my cheek, the sound sharp in the small room. How dare you? She whispered, trembling with rage. My daughter is fighting for her life, while you sit here spreading vicious lies. I touched my cheek, feeling the heat where her hand had connected. The toxicology report will tell us who's lying, Gloria. And in the meantime, perhaps you should ask yourself why your daughter collapsed after drinking from a glass that was intended for me. Before she could respond, the door burst open. Michael stood there, his face ashen, looking between us. Mom? Grandmother? What's going on? I heard shouting. Gloria composed herself instantly. Nothing, darling. Your mother and I were just having a difference of opinion about Vanessa's condition. Michael's bloodshot eyes focused on me. Mom, they're saying it was poison. That someone might have done this deliberately. The naked fear in his voice made my heart contract. Did he know what Vanessa had planned? Was he truly innocent, or just a better actor than I'd given him credit for? Michael, I said gently, we need to talk. About Vanessa, about the debts, about Cruz. He froze, the blood draining from his face. What are you talking about? Don't say another word, Eleanor. Gloria cut in sharply. Michael, your mother is confused. The stress of the evening. I'm not confused, I said firmly. I know everything, Michael. About the loans, the interest, the deadline. I know what was supposed to happen tonight. My son staggered back as if I'd physically struck him. No, he whispered. You can't. How did you? Gloria gripped his arm. Michael, stop. Don't say anything else. We need a lawyer. But Michael wasn't listening. He stared at me, his expression crumpling. Mom, I swear I didn't know. I didn't know what she was planning. The investment trust was real, at least I thought it was. To help secure your money, protect it. While giving you both access to it. I finished for him. He didn't deny it. We needed help. The debts, they got out of control. Cruz threatened us. Our house, our lives. I was scared, Mom. Gloria's fingernails dug into his arm. Michael, be quiet. He shook her off. No, grandmother. No more lies. No more schemes. He turned back to me, tears streaming down his face. But I swear on my life, I didn't know she would try to hurt you. You have to believe me. I wanted to. God help me. I wanted to believe my son wasn't capable of plotting my death. But I'd been fooled before, underestimated before. If that's true, I said carefully, then you need to tell Detective Marquez everything. About the debts, about Cruz, about what you did know regarding tonight. He will do no such thing, Gloria snapped. This family does not air its dirty laundry to the police. This family tried to murder me, I replied, my voice rising despite my efforts to remain calm. And now Vanessa is lying in a hospital bed because she drank what she intended for me. Michael's eyes widened. What? You heard me, I said, watching his face carefully. I saw her put something in my champagne. I switched our glasses. Whatever she meant for me, she got instead. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael stared at me as if seeing a stranger. You knew, he whispered. And you let her drink it anyway? The accusation in his voice cut deep. What would you have had me do, Michael? Stand there and drink poison to protect the woman who was trying to kill me? He had no answer for that. The door opened once more, and Detective Marquez entered, her expression grim. Mr. Winters, Mrs. Hamilton Pierce, Mrs. Winters. The preliminary toxicology results are back. The substance in Mrs. Pierce Winters' system is a compound called thallium, a highly toxic, virtually untraceable poison when administered in small doses. Gloria gasped. Michael stumbled backward until he hit the wall, sliding down to sit on the floor, his head in his hands. The vial you provided, Mrs. Winters, Marquez continued, contains traces of the same substance. We're treating this as an attempted homicide. She turned to Michael. Mr. Winters, I need to ask you to come with me for further questioning. He needs a lawyer. Gloria interjected immediately. Marquez nodded. He's entitled to legal representation. But I should inform you both that we've already executed a search warrant at your residence. Our team has found documents pertaining to your financial dealings with Victor Cruz, as well as research on various poisons, including thallium, on Mrs. Pierce Winters' personal laptop. Michael made a sound like a wounded animal. No, he moaned. Vanessa wouldn't, she couldn't. But the denial in his voice was weaker now, uncertainty creeping in like a tide. "There's more," Marquez added. "We've also found evidence suggesting this wasn't the first attempt on Mrs. Winter's life." That got my attention. "What?"
Marquez looked at me.
"Your recent bout of food poisoning 3 weeks ago? The symptoms you described to your doctor match low-dose thallium exposure. We believe your daughter-in-law may have been poisoning you gradually, building up to tonight's larger dose." The room spun around me. I gripped the arms of my chair to steady myself. The persistent nausea, the hair loss I'd attributed to stress, the strange tingling in my extremities, all symptoms I dismissed, all while living under my son's roof. "Take them both in for questioning," I said quietly. "Michael and Gloria. Neither leaves this hospital without speaking to you." Gloria drew herself up indignantly. "You have no authority." "Perhaps not," I interrupted, "but Detective Marquez does. And I suspect she's as interested as I am in knowing whether this was just Vanessa's plan or a family conspiracy." Michael looked up at me, his face streaked with tears. "Mom, please. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I wanted to go to him, to hold him as I had when he was a little boy with skinned knees or nightmares. But the chasm between us had grown too wide, the betrayal too deep. "Tell the detective everything, Michael," I said instead. "Everything about the debts, about Cruz, about the investment trust. If you're truly innocent in this, the truth will protect you." As Marquez led them both away, Michael broken, Gloria seething, I remained seated, suddenly exhausted beyond words. The adrenaline that had carried me through the evening was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness and a hollow ache where my heart should be. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from James. I answered mechanically. "Eleanor," his voice was urgent. "Where are you right now?" "Still at the hospital."
"Why?"
"You need to leave immediately. My security team has intercepted communications suggesting Cruz is sending people to the hospital." I straightened, alert again. "The police are here. Marquez. Cruz has connections in the department. Not Marquez, but others. You're not safe there. My team is 3 minutes from your location. They'll bring you to a secure location we've prepared." "But Michael is in police custody and safer than you are right now. Eleanor, please. Trust me on this." I stood, gathering my purse with suddenly trembling hands. "All right. East entrance."
"Yes."
"Black SUV. Driver will identify as Sentinel."
"Go now."
I moved as quickly as my age and evening wear would allow, navigating the hospital corridors with a growing sense of urgency. Every face I passed became suspect. Was that orderly really hospital staff? Why was that man in the suit watching me so intently? Paranoia, perhaps. But paranoia had kept me alive this long. I reached the east entrance just as a black SUV pulled up. The driver lowered his window. "Sentinel," he said simply. I had barely closed the door behind me when the vehicle pulled away from the curb, accelerating smoothly into the night. "Where are we going?" I asked the driver, a broad-shouldered man with a military bearing. "Secure location outside the city," he replied, eyes constantly scanning the road. "Mr. Harrington's instructions." I sank back against the leather seat, the events of the evening washing over me in waves. My son in police custody. My daughter-in-law in intensive care. A loan shark sending men after me. How had my simple, invisible life transformed into this nightmare? The lottery. $100 million that had revealed the darkest corners of my family's souls, and perhaps my own as well. The SUV took a series of turns, merging onto the highway heading north out of the city. Through the tinted windows, I watched the glittering skyline recede, the urban landscape giving way to darkness. "How long until we reach this secure location?" I asked after several miles of silence. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "About 40 minutes, ma'am. Try to rest if you can. Mr. Harrington will meet us there." Rest seemed impossible, but I closed my eyes anyway, the gentle motion of the vehicle almost hypnotic. Despite everything, exhaustion began to claim me. I must have dozed off because I woke with a start when the SUV slowed and turned onto a gravel road. Outside, dense trees lined the path, their shadows deep in the moonlight. We approached a gate with a security checkpoint where a guard verified something with our driver before waving us through. Beyond the gate stood a large, modern house set back from the road, its windows warmly lit against the night. As we pulled into the circular driveway, I saw James waiting on the front steps. "Eleanor," he greeted me as the driver opened my door. "I'm sorry for the dramatics, but we needed to get you somewhere safe." "Whose house is this?" I asked, looking up at the impressive structure. "It's one of my firm's properties. We use it for clients who need privacy." He led me inside, where the interior was as elegant as the exterior. Understated luxury with state-of-the-art security visible at every turn. "I have updates," James continued as we entered a spacious living room. "Detective Marquez called. The poison in the vial is definitely thallium. They've arrested your daughter-in-law, though she's still in the hospital under guard. Your son is being questioned but hasn't been charged yet." I sank onto a sofa, suddenly feeling every one of my 60 years. "And Gloria?" "Released for now, but under surveillance. Marquez doesn't think she was directly involved in the poisoning, but she's investigating whether Gloria knew about the financial situation with Cruz." I nodded slowly. "And Cruz himself?" James's expression darkened. "That's the more immediate concern. My sources say he's furious. The money he was counting on collecting in 2 days is now effectively out of reach with both Michael and Vanessa in custody. He sees you as both the obstacle and the solution." "Me? You're the one with the money they promised him. In his mind, either you pay their debt or—" He didn't finish the sentence.
He didn't need to.
The implication was clear enough. "So, I'm a target now," I said, stating the obvious.
"Yes.
"But we've prepared for this." James gestured around us. "This property is secure. My team is the best in the business, former military and intelligence operatives. And Marquez is building a case against Cruz using the evidence we've provided." "How long will that take?" He hesitated.
"Hard to say.
"Days, maybe weeks. Cruz is careful. He has lawyers, shell companies, political connections." "Weeks," I echoed hollowly. "I'm to hide here for weeks while my son sits in jail and a criminal tries to hunt me down?" James sat beside me. "Eleanor, I know this isn't what you wanted. But right now, staying safe and letting the legal process work is the best approach." I wasn't so sure. Sitting in that SUV, drifting between sleep and consciousness, an idea had begun to form in my mind. A dangerous idea, perhaps, but one that might end this nightmare more quickly and definitively than waiting for the slow wheels of justice. "I need to make a call," I said suddenly. James frowned. "To whom?" "Your phones might be compromised. Cruz has resources." "Not to anyone they would expect." I met his concerned gaze steadily. "James, I appreciate everything you've done. The security, the evidence gathering, the coordination with Marquez. But there's another angle we haven't explored." "What angle?" "Cruz wants his money. $3 million is a lot to him, obviously, or he wouldn't be sending men after me. But to me." Understanding dawned on James's face. "You're thinking of paying him off." "Not exactly," I replied. "I'm thinking of making him a business proposition." James looked alarmed. "Eleanor, this man is dangerous. He's not someone you negotiate with." "Everyone negotiates when the terms are right," I countered. "And I have something he wants more than Vanessa and Michael's debt." "Which is?" "A legitimate business opportunity. A way to clean his money through my foundation." I held up a hand as James began to protest. "Not actually, of course. But as far as he would know." James shook his head. "It's too risky. And potentially illegal just to propose it. Then we make sure Detective Marquez knows exactly what I'm doing. We make it a sting operation." I leaned forward. "James, I can't hide here indefinitely while this man threatens my family. Yes, even after what they've done. I need to end this." He studied me for a long moment. "You've changed, Eleanor. Since the lottery." I considered this. "No," I said finally. "I haven't changed. I've just stopped being invisible." After much discussion and several calls to Detective Marquez, on a secure line James provided, We developed a plan. It was risky, audacious even, but it had the potential to resolve the Cruz situation quickly and provide the evidence needed to put him away for a very long time. The next morning, I made a call from a phone that James assured me would be traced directly back to me if Cruz's people were watching. "I need to speak with Mr. Cruz," I told the man who answered. "Tell him Eleanor Winters is calling about her son's debt." There was a pause then. Wait. Several minutes passed before a new voice came on the line, smooth, accented, with an underlying hardness that sent a chill down my spine. "Mrs. Winters, this is unexpected." "Mr. Cruz," I replied, forcing confidence into my voice. "I believe we have mutual concerns to discuss." "Do we?" His tone was mild, almost amused. "I wasn't aware we had any business together." "My son and his wife owe you money. Money they can't pay now that they're in police custody." "An unfortunate situation," he agreed. "But I fail to see how this concerns you directly." I took a deep breath. "It concerns me because their plan to access my money has failed, and now you're sending men to find me. Men who, I should tell you, will not succeed." There was a long silence. Then Cruz chuckled, a sound entirely devoid of humor. "You're a direct woman, Mrs. Winters. I appreciate that. So let me be direct in return. Your son and his wife promise me payment. Their legal complications do not change that fact. The debt remains. And debts to me are always collected, one way or another." "I understand," I said. "That's why I'm proposing an alternative arrangement."
I'm listening.
"A meeting. Just you and me. I have a business proposition that would be worth far more to you than my son's $3 million. Another pause. "You expect me to believe a woman of your background has a business proposition for someone like me?" "A woman who recently won $100 million, I corrected him. "A woman who is establishing foundations and investment trusts. A woman who needs certain financial services that operate outside conventional banking restrictions." The implication hung in the air that I was offering him a money laundering opportunity, a chance to clean his illicit funds through my legitimate enterprises. Cruz was silent for so long I wondered if he'd hung up. Finally, he said, "If this is some kind of trap, Mrs. Winters." "It's business," I interrupted. "Pure and simple. You want your money. I want my family's debt cleared and your people to stop coming after me. And I'm offering you something much more valuable in the long term." "Where and when?" "The Belmont Hotel.
Présidentielle suite.
Tomorrow at noon." The same hotel where Vanessa had collapsed, a deliberate choice to throw him off balance. "Alone," he stipulated. "Of course. You as well." Cruz laughed again, that same cold sound. "We shall see, Mrs. Winters. We shall see." The line went dead. I looked up at James and Detective Marquez, who had been listening on speakerphone. "He's considering it," I said. Marquez nodded grimly. "And we'll be ready. But Eleanor, you understand the risk you're taking? This man is dangerous."
I'm aware, he replied.
"But so am I, apparently. Just ask my daughter-in-law." The next 24 hours passed in a flurry of preparation. Marquez's team swept the presidential suite, installing hidden cameras and microphones. James's security personnel reviewed every entry point, every contingency. I was fitted with a nearly invisible wire and coached on how to lead the conversation toward incriminating statements. Remember, Marquez instructed me as we did a final review in a hotel room 3 floors below the presidential suite. We need him to explicitly acknowledge the debt, the threats, and ideally, to agree to the money laundering scheme on tape. Don't push too hard, but don't let him be vague either. I nodded, surprisingly calm despite the stakes. "I understand. We'll have officers positioned throughout the hotel," she continued. "If anything goes wrong, use the panic phrase. My financial advisor is expecting my call, and we'll move in immediately." James looked deeply uncomfortable with the entire plan. "It's not too late to reconsider," he said quietly. "We could still pursue this through conventional channels." While Cruz's men continue to hunt me, I shook my head.
No.
"We end this today." At exactly noon, I entered the presidential suite alone, dressed in a conservative blue suit that projected both wealth and confidence. The room was opulent, crystal chandeliers, plush carpets, floor-to-ceiling windows with a panoramic view of the city. I had barely settled on one of the silk sofas when there was a knock at the door. I took a deep breath, then called, "Come in." The man who entered was not what I had expected. Victor Cruz was older than I'd imagined, perhaps in his early 60s, with silver hair and an immaculate charcoal suit. He moved with the deliberate grace of a big cat, his dark eyes taking in every detail of the room and me, in one sweeping glance. "Mrs. Winters," he said, his voice matching the one I'd heard on the phone. "A pleasure to meet you in person." "Mr. Cruz," I replied, remaining seated. "Thank you for coming." He smiled, revealing perfect white teeth. How could I refuse such an intriguing invitation? He sat across from me, unbuttoning his jacket with practiced ease. "Especially from a woman who has caused me such inconvenience." "I've caused you inconvenience?" I raised an eyebrow. "Your debtors tried to murder me." "I'd say the inconvenience has been mutual." Cruz inclined his head, conceding the point. "Perhaps. Though I had no knowledge of their specific plans. I merely expect payment of debts. How they acquire the funds is not my concern." "Then let's discuss those debts," I said, getting straight to business. "My son and his wife owe you $3 million. Money they attempted to secure by accessing my lottery winnings, first through manipulation, then through more direct methods." "So it would seem," he agreed, watching me carefully. "A most unfortunate family situation." "Indeed. But their failure doesn't resolve your expectation of payment." Cruz spread his hands. "Debts to me do not simply disappear, Mrs. Winters. They are always collected. Always. Even if it means sending men to threaten or harm me?" I asked directly. His expression didn't change. "I employ men to protect my business interests. Sometimes that requires persuasive measures." I leaned forward slightly. "Let me be clear, Mr. Cruz. I have no intention of paying my son's debt simply because you threaten me. That's not how I conduct business." "No." His eyebrows rose. "Then why are we having this conversation?" "Because I'm offering you something more valuable. A business relationship that would benefit us both." Cruz's eyes narrowed with interest. "Explain." "I've recently established a charitable foundation. Substantial assets, international reach, multiple funding streams. The perfect structure for certain financial services." "Money laundering," he said bluntly. I didn't flinch. "Financial restructuring. My foundation could move significant sums through its legitimate operations. Sums much larger than $3 million. And why would you, a respectable lottery winner, want to involve yourself in such activities?" I gave him a thin smile. "Because respectability is expensive, Mr. Cruz. And taxes are burdensome. I may have won $100 million, but after the government takes its share, I'm looking for ways to maximize what remains." Cruz studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he chuckled. "You are full of surprises, Mrs. Winters. I admit, I had dismissed you as an ordinary woman who stumbled into wealth. But perhaps there is more to you." "There usually is more to people than meets the eye," I replied evenly. "So, are you interested in my proposition?" "Potentially." He leaned back, completely at ease. "But I would need specifics. Amounts, methods, timelines. And what do you expect in return?" "My son's debt erased. Your men called off. And a percentage of the funds moved, naturally." Cruz smiled again, the expression not reaching his eyes. "Naturally. And these specifics." This was the moment we'd prepared for, getting him to discuss actual money laundering details on record. "I can move $5 million through the foundation each quarter," I said. "Through donations, grants, international aid projects. Clean money out, with the proper documentation to satisfy any regulatory oversight. For a fee of 15%, which more than covers my son's debt in the first transaction alone." Cruz nodded slowly. "Ambitious. But there are technical aspects to consider. How do you propose to handle the initial transfers? Wire? Cryptocurrency?" I was about to respond when Cruz suddenly held up his hand, silencing me. His eyes had sharpened, his posture tensing. "Excuse me a moment," he said, standing smoothly. He walked to the window, appearing to admire the view, while pulling out his phone. He spoke briefly in what sounded like Spanish, his voice too low for me to hear. When he turned back to me, his expression had hardened. "Mrs. Winters, do you take me for a fool?" I kept my face neutral, though my pulse quickened. "I don't understand." "I think you do." He moved toward me with that same feline grace, but now there was nothing benign about it. "My men have been watching this hotel since morning. They've identified no fewer than 7 undercover police officers on the premises." His smile was razor-sharp, including in the room directly below us. My mind raced. Had we been compromised? Was Marquez listening? Should I use the panic phrase? "Mr. Cruz," I began carefully, "I assure you." "Save your assurances," he cut me off. "I did not survive in my business by being careless." He sat again, remarkably composed for someone who had just discovered a police operation. "However, I am curious. Was this entire proposition a fabrication to entrap me? Or were you genuinely considering such an arrangement before involving the authorities?" I decided truth, or a version of it, was my safest option. The police were my insurance policy. Surely you can understand taking precautions when meeting someone of your reputation. Cruz studied me, then laughed, a genuine sound this time. "Oh, I like you, Mrs. Winters. You have nerve. More than your son, certainly." I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this wasn't a disaster after all. Then perhaps we can still discuss business. Without the complications. Perhaps. His eyes never left mine. "But first, let's address the immediate situation. You are wired, yes?" There was no point denying it. I nodded once. "Then please inform Detective Marquez, and yes, I know exactly who is running this operation, that she has 2 choices. She can order her people to stand down and allow us to continue our conversation privately, or..." He shrugged expressively. "Well, let's just say I have men positioned near your son at the county jail. One call from me, and his legal troubles will become the least of his concerns." My blood ran cold. "You're bluffing."
Cruz Maid.
"Your son is currently in holding cell B14. He was moved there this morning from the general population area. He's wearing standard issue orange, and he has a small cut over his left eyebrow from a minor altercation during breakfast." His eyes glittered. Shall I continue? I believed him, and from the sudden crackle of activity in my nearly invisible earpiece, so did Marquez. "My financial advisor is expecting my call," I said clearly, the panic phrase. Cruz shook his head. "Too late for that, I'm afraid." The door burst open, and 2 men in suits entered, not police, but Cruz's security. One positioned himself by the door while the other quickly swept the room, locating and disabling the surveillance devices with practiced efficiency. "Now," Cruz said when the room had been cleared, "we can speak freely." He turned to his men. "Wait outside. Ensure we're not disturbed." They nodded and left, closing the door behind them. "You won't get away with this," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "The hotel is surrounded." "Indeed it is," he agreed pleasantly. "Which is why we won't be leaving through conventional exits. But that's a concern for later." He leaned forward. "Right now, I'm genuinely interested in your original proposition." That caught me off guard. "What?" "Your foundation. The financial arrangement you proposed. Was that merely bait for your trap, or was there truth to it?" I stared at him, trying to understand his angle. It was conceptually sound, though obviously I had no intention of actually laundering money.
Cruz nodded thoughtfully.
A pity. It was an elegant solution.
He sighed.
"So, we return to the original problem. Your son's debt, which I have no obligation to pay," I reminded him.
"True.
"But you have a mother's obligation to protect her child, do you not? Even a child who has disappointed you so profoundly." The question struck at the heart of my turmoil. Despite everything, Michael was my son, my only family, The thought of him suffering because of my actions, even justified ones, was unbearable. "What do you want?" I asked finally. Cruz's expression softened slightly. "Mrs. Winters, despite what you may think, I am a businessman, not a monster. I do not enjoy inflicting suffering. I simply collect what is owed to me. $3 million. Plus interest and inconvenience fees. Let's call it an even $5 million. I nearly laughed at the absurdity of it. "And if I refuse?" His eyes hardened again. "Then I cannot guarantee your son's safety. Or yours, despite your impressive security measures." We had reached an impasse. Cruz wouldn't leave without his money. The police couldn't intervene without endangering Michael. And I was trapped in a suite with a dangerous criminal who had outmaneuvered all our careful planning. Then a thought occurred to me. A dangerous, possibly insane thought. "What if I offered you a different arrangement?" I said slowly. "Not money laundering. Something legal, but still very profitable." Cruz raised an eyebrow.
I'm listening.
"My foundation is real. The international connections, the funding streams, all legitimate. What if I offered you a position within the organization?
Consultant.
Advisor. Something that provides a legitimate income stream while allowing you to leverage certain international relationships." He tilted his head, considering. "Go on. You have connections in countries where aid organizations struggle to operate effectively. You understand systems that most legitimate businesses can't navigate. That knowledge has value, legal value, to an organization like mine. You're suggesting I go legitimate?" He sounded amused rather than offended.
I'm suggesting diversification. I clarified.
Your existing operations continue, but you gain a legitimate enterprise with international reach. Over time, the balance could shift. Cruz was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Then he smiled. "You are a remarkable woman, Eleanor Winters. Most people in your position would be paralyzed with fear. Yet here you are, negotiating business deals." "I've discovered recently that I'm quite good at adapting to circumstances," I replied dryly. He laughed again. "Indeed you are." He stood, buttoning his jacket. "I find your proposal intriguing, not as an immediate solution, but as a long-term possibility worth exploring. And my son's debt?" Cruz considered this. "A gesture of good faith would be appropriate. Say $2 million now, to show your commitment to our potential partnership." It wasn't ideal, but it was better than $5 million or threats to Michael's safety. "And you'll leave him alone?" "No more threats, no more men watching him or me." "You have my word. Once the initial payment is made, your son's debt will be considered settled in full." I wasn't naive enough to trust him completely, but I sensed he was being truthful, at least about this specific deal. "I'll need to make arrangements," I said. "The money isn't sitting in a checking account." "Of course." Cruz pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "This account can accept wire transfers from anywhere in the world. Once confirmed, our business will be concluded."
He paused.
"For now." He moved toward the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Mrs. Winters? I would advise against attempting to trace the account or involving the authorities further. I've quite enjoyed our conversation and would hate for our next meeting to be less cordial." After he left, I sat motionless for several minutes, processing what had just happened. Then I removed the now useless wire from my clothing and waited. It didn't take long. Detective Marquez burst in, flanked by officers with weapons drawn. "Eleanor, are you all right?"
Her eyes scanned me for signs of injury.
"I'm fine," I assured her, feeling oddly calm despite everything. "But Cruz is gone. His men must have an exit strategy we didn't anticipate." Marquez holstered her weapon, her expression frustrated. "They disabled our surveillance before we could get enough for an arrest. And now he knows we're watching him." She ran a hand through her hair. "This operation is compromise." "Not entirely," I said, handing her Cruz's card. "I negotiated a resolution. $2 million to clear my son's debt." She stared at me. "You can't seriously be considering paying him." "I most certainly am. That's essentially extortion. And paying him won't end this. Men like Cruz don't just walk away. He will from this, I said with more confidence than I felt, because I offered him something more valuable than money. A legitimate business opportunity. Marquez looked skeptical. And you believe him? I believe he's a businessman first, criminal second. The foundation opportunity intrigues him. It's a chance to diversify, to create a legitimate legacy alongside his other enterprises. Eleanor, she said gently, this isn't a corporate merger. This is Victor Cruz, one of the most dangerous loan sharks on the East Coast.
I'm aware, he replied.
But I also know that men like Cruz understand value and opportunity. The $2 million buys Michael's safety and gives me time to develop the legitimate business angle, which you and your team can monitor completely legally. Marquez shook her head, but I could see she was considering it. It's unorthodox. So is switching champagne glasses with a would-be poisoner, I pointed out. Sometimes unorthodox works. In the end, we reached a compromise. I would make the payment to clear Michael's debt, but Marquez's team would monitor the transaction as part of an ongoing investigation into Cruz's operations. The foundation offer would proceed, carefully structured by James and his legal team to provide maximum transparency and minimum risk. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it offered a path forward that didn't end with either Michael or me in immediate danger. As I left the hotel under heavy police escort, my phone rang. It was the hospital. Mrs. Winters? This is Dr. Reeves. I'm calling about your daughter-in-law, Vanessa Pierce Winters. My grip tightened on the phone. Yes, doctor. There's been a development in her condition. She's regained consciousness and is asking to speak with you. Specifically you. He paused. Given the circumstances, the police have approved a brief visit if you're willing. Was I willing? The woman had tried to murder me. She had poisoned me slowly for weeks before attempting the final act at the party. Every instinct told me to refuse. And yet, I'll be there in 30 minutes, I heard myself say. Detective Marquez, who had been listening, raised her eyebrows. Are you sure that's wise? Probably not, I admitted. But I need to hear what she has to say. The hospital room was heavily guarded, with 2 officers stationed outside and 1 inside. Vanessa looked diminished against the white sheets, her normally perfect appearance ravaged by the effects of the poison she'd intended for me. Her skin had a grayish pallor, and her hair lay limp around her face. She turned as I entered, her eyes widening slightly. Eleanor, she whispered, her voice hoarse. You came. I remained standing at the foot of her bed. You asked to see me? She nodded weakly. They told me what happened. That you switched the glasses. A bitter smile twisted her lips. Clever. I didn't think you had it in you. Neither did I replied honestly, until I saw you try to poison me. Vanessa closed her eyes briefly. I never wanted it to come to that. The pills in your food before, they were just supposed to make you sick. Vulnerable. Willing to sign whatever we put in front of you. But I didn't cooperate. No, she agreed. You became suspicious. Started making your own arrangements. Time was running out with Cruz. I studied her, this woman who had married my son, who had treated me with contempt, who had systematically planned my death. Why did you want to see me, Vanessa?
To explain?
To apologize. She laughed weakly, the sound dissolving into a cough. Apologize?
No.
I wanted to warn you. That wasn't what I expected. Warn me about what? Michael. Her eyes, those eyes that had always been so calculating, now held a different kind of intensity. He knew, Eleanor. About everything. The poison in your food. The plan for the party. He knew. The room seemed to tilt around me. You're lying. Why would I lie now? She asked. I'm going to prison for attempted murder. I have nothing to gain by making this up. To hurt me, I suggested. One final twist of the knife. Vanessa shook her head slightly. Think about it. How could I have accessed your food without him knowing? How could I have planned the party, arranged the special champagne tray? Michael was part of it from the beginning. I wanted to deny it, to reject her words as the desperate lies of a woman facing ruin. But doubt had already taken root. Little inconsistencies in Michael's behavior, moments when his act had slipped, the way he'd positioned himself away from me during the toast. He's always been weak, Vanessa continued, her voice growing fainter. Willing to let others take the lead, make the hard decisions. But don't mistake weakness for innocence. The monitor beside her bed beeped as her heart rate increased. The officer in the corner straightened, alert to the change. Why tell me this? I asked. What do you gain? She looked at me directly, her gaze surprisingly clear. Because if I'm going down for this, I'm not going alone. And because. She hesitated, something like regret flickering across her face. Because you should know the truth about the son you're still trying to protect. The officer stepped forward. That's enough. The doctor said 5 minutes max. I nodded, my mind reeling. At the door, I paused and looked back. Vanessa. The poison. What if I had drunk it? What would have happened? She held my gaze. You would have died within hours. Painfully. And it would have looked like heart failure in a woman your age.
Perfect.
Untraceable. A ghost of her former smile touched her lips. No one would have questioned it, but they would have questioned the investment papers I supposedly signed right before my convenient death, I pointed out. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. We had contingencies for that. Character witnesses. A grieving son who would testify to your mental state, your intentions. And you would have gotten away with it. Yes, she said simply. We would have. I left without another word, the truth settling around me like a shroud. Outside in the corridor, Detective Marquez was waiting. You heard? I asked. She nodded grimly. Through the officer's body cam. It changes things. Michael, I whispered. We'll need to interview him again, she said. With this new information. I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. She could be lying. She could be, Marquez agreed. But we need to investigate regardless. I nodded, numb. The possibility that Michael had not just known about but participated in planning my death was almost too much to bear. I need to see him, I said. Before you question him again. Marquez hesitated. That's not standard procedure. Nothing about this case has been standard procedure, I reminded her.
Please.
I need to look my son in the eye when I ask him if he tried to murder his own mother. After a moment, she nodded. I'll arrange it, but not at the jail. We'll bring him to the station, set up a monitored room. For your safety. My safety. For my own son. The absurdity of it would have made me laugh if it hadn't been so heartbreaking. 2 hours later, I sat in a small room at the police station waiting. The door opened, and Michael entered, escorted by an officer. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, the county jail jumpsuit hanging loosely on his frame. Mom, he said, his voice cracking. Thank God you're okay. They wouldn't tell me anything, just that Cruz's men might have targeted you. The officer directed him to sit across from me, then took up position by the door. I studied my son's face, searching for signs of deception, of the calculated planning Vanessa had described. All I saw was exhaustion and fear. Michael, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. I visited Vanessa today. His expression changed, a flicker of something I couldn't quite read. How is she? Recovering. And talking. I leaned forward slightly. She says you knew about the poison, Michael. That you were part of the plan from the beginning. He recoiled as if I'd slapped him.
What? No.
She's lying, Mom. I swear to God. I had no idea she was trying to poison you. Then explain to me how she managed to contaminate my food while I was staying in your home. Explain the party arrangements, the special champagne tray. His face crumpled. I don't know. She handled all of that. The household stuff, the party planning. You know Vanessa. She controls everything. Including you? I asked quietly. Tears welled in his eyes.
Mom, please. You have to believe me.
I knew about the investment trust. I knew we needed your signature to access funds for Cruz.
But murder?
I could never. His voice broke. You're my mother. I wanted to believe him. Every maternal instinct screamed that my son couldn't be capable of such calculated evil. But I'd been wrong before about Vanessa, about the safety of my own home. Look me in the eye, I said. Tell me you never discussed using poison. Tell me you never researched thallium on your home computer. Tell me you never stood by while your wife slowly poisoned me. Michael met my gaze, his eyes swimming with tears. I never knew about any poison. I never researched thallium. I never stood by while Vanessa hurt you. He reached for my hands across the table. Mom, I swear on my life. The officer stepped forward. No physical contact, please. Michael withdrew his hands reluctantly. I made terrible mistakes. I got us into debt with a dangerous man. I went along with Vanessa's plan to get you to sign the investment papers. But I never, ever wanted to hurt you. I searched his face, his eyes. The eyes that had looked up at me with love and trust when he was a child. The eyes that had turned away in embarrassment during his teenage years. The eyes that had barely seen me at all since his marriage to Vanessa. Could I trust what I saw there now? The police will be questioning you again, I said finally. About Vanessa's claims. About the research on your home computers. About the timing of events. He nodded, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. I understand. I'll tell them everything I know. No more lies, no more secrets. I stood, signaling the end of our meeting. I want to believe you, Michael. God help me, I do. Mom, he called as I turned to leave. I love you. Whatever happens, whatever they find, I love you. I paused at the door, but didn't look back. I love you too. That's never been the question. As I left the station, the weight of everything pressed down on me, the betrayal, the danger, the uncertainty still hanging over my son's guilt or innocence. The sky had darkened with approaching storm clouds, matching my mood perfectly. James was waiting in his car as promised. How did it go? He asked as I slid into the passenger seat. I don't know, I admitted. I truly don't know if he's telling the truth or if I'm being blind because I want to believe him. James nodded sympathetically. The evidence will tell the story, one way or another. Detective Marquez's team is thorough. And in the meantime? I asked. Cruz is still out there. My son is still in custody. And I'm still a target. In the meantime, he replied, pulling away from the curb, we proceed with the plans we've made. The wire transfer to Cruz. The foundation structure. And keeping you safe. Rain began to fall, streaking the windows and blurring the city beyond. I watched the droplets race down the glass, each taking its own chaotic path, but all inevitably drawn downward. James, I said suddenly, I want to see the foundation documents. All of them. Tonight. He glanced at me. Of course. But why the urgency? Because if we're using it as bait for Cruz, I want to make sure it's constructed exactly as I want it. And because. I hesitated, the idea still forming. Because I think it might be the key to resolving all of this. Not just Cruz, but Michael. Everything. How so? I turned from the window to face him. What if the foundation wasn't just a lure? What if it became the actual solution? A legitimate enterprise that could help people like me, older women overlooked by society, vulnerable to predators both financial and familial. James considered this. That's actually brilliant and completely feasible. And what if, I continued, the idea gaining momentum, we structured it so that neither Michael nor anyone else could ever access the funds for personal use. So that my money truly did go to a cause greater than any of us. A fitting response to everything that's happened, James agreed. Using your winnings to protect others from the very fate you narrowly escaped. As we drove through the rain-soaked streets, I felt a strange sense of clarity emerging from the chaos of recent days. The lottery win that had nearly cost me my life could become a force for good, a legacy far beyond anything I had imagined when those 6 numbers changed everything. My phone rang, breaking my reverie. Detective Marquez's name flashed on the screen. Eleanor, she said when I answered, her voice tense. We have a situation. The jail just called. There was an incident involving your son. My heart seemed to stop. What kind of incident? Is he hurt? He's alive, she assured me quickly. But He was attacked in the shower area. Multiple stab wounds. They've taken him to Memorial Hospital. Cruz, I whispered. It appears so. The timing is too coincidental. I'm on my way, I said, gesturing urgently to James to change direction. Eleanor, wait, Marquez cautioned. This could be a trap. Cruz might be expecting you to rush to the hospital. It would put you right where his people could reach you. She was right, of course. But this was my son, my only child. Whatever he had or hadn't done, I couldn't abandon him now. I understand the risk, I said. But I'm going. Have your people meet us there if you're concerned. James had already turned the car around, heading toward Memorial Hospital with grim determination. You realize this changes everything, he said after I hung up. Cruz never intended to honor your deal. Or someone else gave the order. I countered. Someone who didn't want Michael talking to the police again. Vanessa? I considered this. Possibly. Or Gloria. We still don't know how deep this conspiracy goes. The hospital emergency entrance was a scene of controlled chaos when we arrived. Police cruisers with flashing lights, uniformed officers establishing a perimeter, medical staff rushing between areas. Detective Marquez met us at a side entrance, her expression grave. He's in surgery. Multiple stab wounds to the abdomen and chest. It's touch and go. How did this happen? I demanded. He was supposed to be protected in custody. We're investigating. Initial reports suggest the attacker was another inmate, but it was clearly orchestrated. She guided us through a series of corridors to a secure waiting area. We've set up a protective detail here. No one gets in without clearance. I sank into a chair, the reality of the situation crashing over me. My son was fighting for his life because of money, because of my money. The lottery win that should have been a blessing had become a curse that threatened to destroy everything and everyone around me. I need to make the transfer to Cruz, I said suddenly.
Now.
Before anything else happens. Marquez frowned. Eleanor, that won't stop this. If Cruz ordered the attack, it might buy us time, I interrupted. And right now, time is what Michael needs most. James was already on his phone, contacting the bank. We can initiate the wire within the hour. But Eleanor, Detective Marquez is right. This won't end with payment. I know, I said quietly, but it might give us space to implement the next phase of the plan. Which is? Marquez asked. I looked between them, my lawyer and the detective, both trying to protect me in their own ways, both limited by the conventional boundaries of their professions. I'm going to give Cruz exactly what he wants, I said. And then I'm going to take everything from him. The plan I outlined was audacious, possibly reckless. It involved using the foundation as both bait and trap, offering Cruz a legitimate business opportunity that would expose his entire operation to scrutiny. It meant placing myself in the center of the storm, using my status as a victim to draw public attention to predatory lending practices and financial abuse of the elderly. It meant becoming visible in ways I had never been before. It's dangerous, Marquez warned. It's unprecedented, James added. It's necessary, I countered. Because this isn't just about me anymore. It's about every person who's been victimized by people like Cruz, by family members like Vanessa. It's about changing the power dynamic. As we debated the details, a surgeon in blood-spattered scrubs entered the waiting area. His expression told me everything before he spoke a single word. Mrs. Winters, he said.
I'm Dr. Connelly.
I operated on your son. I stood on unsteady legs. How is he? The surgeon's face was compassionate but direct. He's alive, but his condition is critical. The wounds were severe. One penetrated his liver, another collapsed his lung. We've repaired the damage, but the next 24 hours will be crucial. Can I see him? I asked. He's in recovery now. Once he's moved to ICU, you can visit briefly. Dr. Connelly hesitated. I should warn you, he's on a ventilator, and there's a possibility of brain damage due to oxygen deprivation during the attack. The room seemed to spin around me. Brain damage. My son, my Michael, might never be the same even if he survived. Thank you, doctor. I managed. After he left, I turned to Marquez. a cold fury replacing my shock. I want Cruz. Not just arrested. Destroyed. Everything he has, everything he's built. I want it torn down around him. She nodded, her own expression hardening. We'll get him, Eleanor. I promise you that. Not fast enough, I said. Not through conventional channels. We do this my way now. James looked concerned. Eleanor, you need to think carefully. Grief and anger. This isn't grief. I cut him off. This is clarity. For the first time since I won that cursed lottery, I see exactly what needs to be done. I turned back to the window, looking out at the rain-drenched city where, somewhere, Victor Cruz was going about his business, believing he had the upper hand. Believing he had silenced my son, intimidated me, secured his payment. He had no idea what was coming. Make the wire transfer, I instructed James. Then call a press conference. It's time the world met Eleanor Winters. As James made the necessary arrangements, I sat by the window, watching the storm rage outside. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the hospital grounds in brief, electric flashes. A fitting backdrop for the storm I was about to unleash. After he left, I showered in the small bathroom attached to the family room, the hot water washing away some of the physical exhaustion but doing little for the emotional weight I carried. I dressed in the clothes James had brought, a tailor navy suit that projected strength and professionalism. Perfect for what I had planned. I spent another hour at Michael's bedside, talking to him softly, hoping that somewhere in the depths of his unconsciousness, he could hear me. I told him about the press conference, about my plans for Cruz, about the foundation that would become my legacy, and perhaps his redemption, if he chose it. I don't know if you were part of Vanessa's plan, I whispered, holding his limp hand. I don't know if you meant for any of this to happen, but I'm giving you a chance to start over, Michael. If, when you wake up, there will be a place for you in this new life I'm building. Not as a beneficiary, but as a contributor. A chance to rebuild not just your life, but others as well. Whether he heard me or not, I needed to say the words. To offer the possibility of forgiveness, of reconciliation, but on new terms, with clear boundaries. Detective Marquez arrived precisely at noon, accompanied by a female officer I hadn't met before. Eleanor, she greeted me, her expression softer than usual. How are you holding up? As well as can be expected, I replied. No change in Michael's condition. She nodded sympathetically. This is Officer Diaz. She'll be your security detail for the press conference and afterward. Officer Diaz, a compact woman with alert eyes, shook my hand firmly.
Mom.
We need to go over the security arrangements, Marquez continued. The press conference is being held at police headquarters to maximize safety, but Cruz has resources. We can't afford any mistakes. We spent the next hour reviewing protocols, escape routes, and contingency plans. Marquez was leaving nothing to chance. What about the content of my statement? I asked when we had finished. Any restrictions there? Marquez hesitated. Legally, you can say whatever you want, but I strongly advise against directly accusing Cruz of ordering the attack on Michael without evidence. He could sue for defamation. I understand, I assured her. I have no intention of giving him any legal advantage. My approach will be more nuanced. She didn't look entirely convinced but nodded. I'll trust your judgment. James mentioned you've been remarkably strategic throughout this ordeal. I smiled thinly. When you've been invisible as long as I have, detective, you learn to observe, to calculate, to wait for the right moment. At 1:30 p.m., we left the hospital through a service entrance, avoiding the small cluster of reporters who had already gathered at the main doors. News of the lottery winner, whose family had imploded in attempted murder and violence, had begun to spread, fueled by leaks from the hospital staff and police department. The ride to police headquarters was tense, our small convoy taking an indirect route as a precaution. I used the time to review my notes, making small adjustments to what I planned to say. I had no prepared statement, no script, just bullet points to guide me through the key messages I wanted to convey. When we arrived, I was surprised by the number of media representatives already assembled in the press room. Local stations, national networks, even a few international outlets. James had done his job well, ensuring maximum coverage for what I was about to say. He met me in a small room adjacent to the press area. Everything's ready. The foundation website goes live the moment you step up to the podium. Social media accounts are prepped and waiting. The press packets have been distributed. I took a deep breath. And the legal team? On standby. The moment Cruz or anyone connected to him makes a move, we'll know. I nodded, squaring my shoulders. Then let's begin. Detective Marquez led me to the podium, the camera flashes beginning immediately as I took my place. The room fell silent, dozens of eyes and lenses trained on me. Good afternoon, I began, my voice surprisingly steady. My name is Eleanor Winters. 2 months ago, I was an ordinary 60-year-old woman, working as a secretary, living in a small apartment, largely forgotten by my family and the world at large. I paused, letting the image settle. Then I won the lottery. $100 million that transformed me overnight from invisible to highly visible. Suddenly, family members who had barely acknowledged my existence became devoted and attentive. Financial advisors appeared from nowhere. Everyone wanted a piece of what I had. Cameras clicked rapidly as I continued. What followed was a systematic attempt to separate me from my winnings through manipulation, fraud, and ultimately, attempted murder. A murmur ran through the assembled press. My daughter-in-law put poison in my champagne at a celebration she arranged specifically for that purpose. When I switched our glasses without her knowledge, she drank the poison herself and is now in custody, facing attempted murder charges. More murmurs, more flashes. Yesterday, my son was brutally attacked while in police custody. He is currently in critical condition at Memorial Hospital. The man who stabbed him was found dead this morning, an apparent suicide that conveniently eliminated any possibility of him revealing who ordered the attack. I leaned slightly forward, my gaze sweeping across the room. I am not here to point fingers without evidence. I am here to shine a light on a system that enables and encourages these types of predatory behaviors, particularly against older individuals who suddenly come into wealth. Now came the pivot, the moment where I transformed from victim to advocate. Today, I am announcing the establishment of the Second Chance Foundation, an organization dedicated to protecting vulnerable individuals from financial exploitation and family manipulation. Using my lottery winnings, we will provide legal support, financial guidance, and personal security to those at risk, particularly older women who, like me, have been rendered invisible by a society that values youth and conventional power over experience and resilience. I gestured to a large screen behind me, where the Foundation's website appeared, showing our mission statement and initial programs. This foundation will partner with law enforcement agencies, financial institutions, and advocacy groups to identify and combat predatory practices. It will provide emergency resources to those fleeing exploitative situations. And it will work to change legislation to better protect vulnerable individuals. I paused again, gathering myself for the most critical part of my message. To those who prey on the vulnerable, who see sudden wealth as an opportunity for exploitation rather than a chance for positive change, I have a message. You are now the ones being watched. Your methods are being documented. Your networks are being mapped. Your victims are finding their voices. I looked directly into the main camera, imagining Cruz watching from wherever he was hiding. You may think you've won because you've secured a payment or silenced a witness. But money can be traced. Witnesses can be replaced. And sometimes, the very people you dismissed as powerless are the ones who will ultimately bring you down. The room was completely silent now, every reporter transfixed. I am establishing a special investigative fund within the Foundation specifically focused on exposing predatory lending practices that exploit desperate individuals and force them into criminal activities to repay impossible debts. We have already begun compiling evidence of these operations in our city and beyond. That was the direct challenge to Cruz, the announcement that I was not just a victim seeking justice, but a well-funded adversary systematically dismantling his business model. In the coming weeks, we will be holding public forums for victims of financial exploitation to share their stories and connect with resources. We will be publishing research on common tactics used by predators. and we will be working with banking institutions to create better safeguards for vulnerable account holders. I straightened to my full height, drawing on a strength I hadn't known I possessed until these past terrible weeks. I stand before you today not just as a victim, but as a survivor. And more than that, as someone determined to ensure that what happened to me and my family never happens to anyone else. The money that was meant to destroy me will instead become a force for protection and change. I stepped back from the podium. I'll now take a few questions. The room erupted, dozens of hands shooting into the air. I pointed to a woman in the front row. Mrs. Winters, do you believe your son was complicit in the attempt on your life? A direct hit to my most vulnerable point. I kept my expression neutral. The investigation is ongoing. I don't wish to speculate on my son's involvement while he is fighting for his life in the hospital. What I know for certain is that my daughter-in-law attempted to poison me, and that someone arranged for my son to be attacked while in custody. I pointed to another reporter. You mentioned predatory lending. Are you referring to a specific organization or individual? Careful territory here. I am referring to a documented pattern of behavior in which legitimate financial difficulties are exploited by unscrupulous lenders who charge exorbitant interest rates and use threats of violence to ensure repayment. These operations exist in every major city, including ours. The Foundation will be working to expose specific networks as evidence is gathered. More hands, more questions. I fielded them carefully, neither overreaching nor backing down. After 15 minutes, Detective Marquez stepped forward, indicating that the press conference was concluding. Thank you all for coming, I said. If you wish to learn more about the Second Chance Foundation or to contribute information about financial exploitation, please visit our website. Together, we can transform invisible victims into visible forces for change. As I left the podium, the room erupted again with shouted questions and camera flashes. Officer Diaz and Detective Marquez escorted me quickly to a side room where James was waiting, his expression a mix of admiration and concern. That was remarkable, he said. Powerful, measured, strategic, but also a direct challenge to Cruz. That was the point, I replied, accepting the water bottle he offered. He needs to know that paying him off was just the beginning, not the end. Well, he definitely knows now, Detective Marquez said, checking her phone. We're already getting calls from other victims wanting to share information about his operation. You've struck a nerve. Good. I took a long drink of water, suddenly aware of how dry my throat had become. What's next? We get you back to the hospital, Marquez replied. Security has been doubled around Michael's room. If Cruz retaliates, that's the most likely target. And Gloria? I asked. Her email said she had information. Marquez nodded. We can arrange a meeting tomorrow, in a secure location. I'd like to be present for that. Of course. As we prepared to leave, Officer Diaz received a call. Her expression changed as she listened, and she quickly handed the phone to Marquez. Detective Marquez, she said, then fell silent, her face growing increasingly grim.
When? I see. Keep me updated.
We're on our way. She handed the phone back to Diaz, then turned to me. There's been an incident at the hospital. Someone tried to access Michael's room. My heart seemed to stop. Is he? He's safe, she assured me quickly. The security detail intercepted the individual before they got anywhere near him. But we need to get back immediately. The drive to the hospital was a blur, my mind racing with possibilities. Had Cruz moved this quickly in response to my challenge? Or was this something else entirely? When we arrived, the hospital was in lockdown, additional police officers stationed at every entrance. We were escorted directly to the administrative offices, where the hospital security chief and several officers were reviewing surveillance footage. What happened? Marquez demanded. The security chief, a former police officer himself judging by his bearing, gestured to the monitor. Approximately 45 minutes ago, an individual claiming to be Dr. Reeves, the actual surgeon who operated on Mr. Winters, attempted to enter the ICU. One of our officers noticed discrepancies in his ID badge and challenged him. The suspect immediately fled. He played the footage, showing a man in surgical scrubs and a lab coat being stopped by a security guard. The man's face was partially obscured by a surgical mask, but when the guard reached for his radio, the imposter shoved him aside and ran. "Do we have a clearer image?" Marquez asked. "We caught him on another camera as he fled," the security chief said, switching to a different feed. This one showed the man running toward an emergency exit, his mask dislodged, face clearly visible. Marquez leaned closer. "I know him. That's Anton Reyes, one of Cruz's enforcers. We've been trying to build a case against him for years." "So Cruz did order this," I said, my voice hollow. "It appears so," Marquez agreed grimly. "Despite accepting your payment and sending that polite email, the betrayal shouldn't have surprised me, yet somehow it did. I had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that our transaction had bought at least a temporary reprieve." "I want to see my son," I said. "Of course." The security chief led us through the lockdown hospital to the ICU, where additional officers had been stationed. Michael's room now had 2 armed guards directly outside the door. Inside, nothing had changed. Michael lay motionless, the ventilator continuing its rhythmic work, the monitors showing his stable but critical condition. I sat beside him, taking his hand gently. "We stopped them this time," I told him softly. "And we'll keep stopping them." Detective Marquez entered a few minutes later. "We've issued an APB for Reyes, and I've spoken with the district attorney about expediting our case against Cruz based on this attempt." "Will it be enough?" I asked. She sighed. "Honestly, probably not. We need more direct evidence linking Cruz to these attacks. Reyes won't talk if we catch him. These guys never do. Then we need to create an opportunity for Cruz to incriminate himself," I said, an idea forming. "And I think I know how." I outlined my proposal, a dangerous, possibly reckless plan that would place me directly in Cruz's path again, but under carefully controlled circumstances. "Absolutely not," Marquez said immediately. "It's too risky." "Every option now involves risk," I countered. "But this one gives us control over the situation. We choose the time, the place, the circumstances. We prepare every detail." "It's essentially using you as bait," James protested. "Yes," I agreed, "but bait with very sharp teeth." We debated for nearly an hour, refining the plan, addressing weaknesses, building in safeguards. Gradually, reluctantly, both Marquez and James began to see the potential. "If, and that's a big if, we can ensure your safety," Marquez said finally, "this could work. But we need time to prepare properly." "How much time?" I asked. "At least 3 days. Maybe 4. I glanced at Michael, still unconscious, still fighting for his life. "He doesn't have that long. The longer Cruz remains free, the more danger Michael is in." "And the more danger you're in," James reminded me. I straightened in my chair. Decision made. "We do it tomorrow. After I meet with Gloria. No more delays. No more waiting for Cruz to make the next move. We take the initiative." Marquez looked like she wanted to argue further, but instead nodded reluctantly. "Tomorrow evening, then. We'll work through the night to set everything up." "I'll stay here," I said, returning my attention to Michael. "I'm not leaving him alone again. They didn't try to persuade me otherwise." Additional security arrangements were made, a cop brought in for me, and Officer Diaz stationed directly inside the room. James promised to return in the morning with everything I would need for the meeting with Gloria and the subsequent operation. As night fell, the hospital quieted around us. The rhythmic sounds of the medical equipment became a strange lullaby, punctuated occasionally by the soft conversation of the officers outside the door or a nurse coming to check Michael's vitals. I held my son's hand, thinking about how profoundly life had changed in such a short time. 2 months ago, I had been invisible, a woman past her prime, forgotten by her family, overlooked by society. Now I was at the center of a dangerous game of cat and mouse with a powerful criminal, my face splashed across television screens, my words igniting action. The lottery had brought me wealth, yes. But more importantly, it had brought me visibility. It had forced me to stand up, to fight back, to become someone even I hadn't known I could be. Whether Michael recovered or not, whether he had been complicit in Vanessa's plot or merely its unwitting accessory, I would continue this fight. Not just for him, not just for me, but for all those who remained invisible, vulnerable, exploited. I must have dozed off because I woke with a start to the sound of movement. For a moment, disoriented by sleep, I thought it was another attempt to harm Michael. But it was just the night nurse, checking his and making notes on his chart. "Any change?" I asked, my voice hoarse with sleep. She smiled kindly. "His vitals are actually a bit stronger tonight. Blood pressure's stabilized." "That's a good sign." Hope flickered faintly. "Does that mean he might wake up soon?" "It's impossible to say," she replied honestly. "But every positive change is worth celebrating." After she left, I stood and stretched, working out the kinks from sleeping awkwardly in the chair. Officer Diaz remained vigilant by the door, her eyes constantly scanning, alert despite the late hour. "You should try to rest on the cot," she suggested. "I'll wake you if anything changes." I was about to follow her advice when my phone buzzed with a text. The number was unfamiliar. "I saw your press conference. Impressive performance. But dangerous games have dangerous consequences. Reconsider your path before others suffer."
Você, Cruz.
Somehow he had obtained my private number, a number only James, Marquez, and the hospital had. I showed the message to Officer Diaz, who immediately contacted Marquez. Within minutes, a tech team was working to trace the message, though I doubted they would succeed.
Cruz was too careful for that.
The threat was clear, but so was something else, fear. My public challenge had rattled him. The foundation, the investigative fund, the call for victims to come forward, all represented a threat to his operation more significant than any police investigation. I had found his vulnerability. Now I needed to exploit it. Morning came with no further messages and no change in Michael's condition. James arrived early, bringing fresh clothes, breakfast, and updates on the foundation's launch. "The response has been overwhelming," he reported as I picked at a bagel. "Over 200 emails from potential victims of financial exploitation. Dozens of calls from advocacy groups wanting to partner with us. 3 major banks have reached out about collaborating on new security protocols. And the Special Investigative Fund?" I asked. "Any information specifically about Cruz?" 7 detailed accounts so far, all consistent with what we already know about his operation. Detective Marquez is reviewing them now. "Good. That gives us more leverage for today." James hesitated. "Eleanor, about today's operation, there's still time to reconsider. To let law enforcement handle this their way." I shook my head firmly. Their way hasn't worked so far. Cruz has evaded traditional investigations for years. We need something unexpected, something he won't be prepared for. "And you're sure you're ready for this? It's not just physically dangerous, it's going to be emotionally brutal." I appreciated his concern, but my resolve had only strengthened overnight. "I'm ready, James. I've spent my entire life being underestimated. It's finally becoming useful." The meeting with Gloria was scheduled for 11 a.m. at a secure police facility, a small conference room typically used for witness interviews. James and I arrived early, accompanied by Officer Diaz and another plainclothes officer. Gloria arrived precisely on time, looking significantly less polished than usual. Her designer clothes had been replaced by a simple blouse and slacks, her makeup minimal, her hair pulled back in a no-nonsense style. The stress of recent events showed clearly on her face. "Eleanor," she greeted me, her usual aristocratic confidence dimmed. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. You said you had information about Cruz," I replied, bypassing pleasantries. "That's the only reason I'm here." She nodded, taking the seat across from me. Detective Marquez sat to my right, James to my left, creating a united front. "Before I share what I know," Gloria began, "I want to express my genuine horror at what happened to Michael. Whatever our differences, whatever Vanessa has done, I never wanted harm to come to him. Yet you raised a daughter capable of attempted murder," I said coldly. "Forgive me if I find your expressions of concern somewhat hollow." Gloria flinched but didn't back down. "I deserve that. But believe it or not, I'm not here to defend Vanessa or myself. I'm here because I have information that might help you protect Michael and yourself from Cruz. Go on, Marquez prompted when Gloria paused. Gloria took a deep breath. Vanessa didn't just stumble into debt with Cruz. He was a deliberate choice, someone she sought out specifically because of his reputation for being effective at collection. Effective meaning violent, I clarified. Yes. Gloria looked down at her hands. What you may not know is that Vanessa had used his services before, years ago, before she met Michael. She had gambling issues. Significant ones. This was new information. Michael never mentioned gambling problems. Because he didn't know, Gloria replied. I helped her pay off the first debt. I sold property, liquidated investments. I thought it was behind us. Her voice hardened. I was wrong. So when they got into financial trouble again, I began. She went back to what she knew, Gloria finished. But this time, the amounts were much larger, beyond what I could cover, even if I'd wanted to. Marquez leaned forward. Mrs. Hamilton Pierce, how do you know all this? Did Vanessa tell you directly? Gloria hesitated. Some of it, yes. After she was hospitalized. The rest I pieced together from her records, her communications. I've been investigating, I suppose you could say, trying to understand how my daughter became capable of what she did. And what did you find about Cruz specifically? I asked, bringing her back to the point. Connections, Gloria said. Not just to traditional organized crime, but to political figures, judges, even police officers. She glanced apologetically at Marquez. No offense intended, detective. None taken, Marquez replied grimly. We're well aware of the corruption issues. Names would be helpful. Gloria reached into her bag and withdrew a flash drive. Everything I've found is here. Financial records, emails, phone logs, meeting notes from Vanessa's personal calendar. She was meticulous about documenting her interactions with Cruz, I think as a form of insurance. Marquez took the drive cautiously. We'll need to verify all of this. Of course. Gloria turned back to me. There's one more thing. Something Vanessa told me directly that isn't in those files. Something about Cruz's operation that makes him particularly dangerous right now. Which is? I prompted when she paused dramatically. He's expanding. Moving beyond traditional lending into new territories, political financing, real estate development, even legitimate banking through a network of front companies. Your challenge yesterday didn't just threaten his current operation. It threatened his future empire. The implications were clear. A man protecting his current business was dangerous. A man protecting his future legacy was deadly. Thank you for this information, I said, more sincerely than I'd expected to feel. If it proves useful in stopping Cruz, I'll be grateful. Gloria nodded, then hesitated again. May I ask, how is Michael really? The hospital won't give me any information. For a moment, I saw past the aristocratic facade to the worried grandmother beneath. Whatever her faults, whatever Vanessa had done, Michael was still Gloria's family too. He's stable, I said finally. Still unconscious, still critical, but the doctors say there are some positive signs. Relief flickered across her face. Thank you. I know I have no right to ask, but if there's any change, would you let me know? I studied her, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda. Finding none, I nodded once. I will. As she stood to leave, Gloria paused. Eleanor, whatever you're planning with Cruz, and I can see in your eyes that you're planning something, be careful. He's more dangerous than even Vanessa realized. After she left, Marquez immediately had the flash drive analyzed by her technical team. Within an hour, we had confirmation. The documents appeared genuine and contained potentially damning evidence against Cruz, including records of payoffs to at least 2 police officers and a deputy district attorney. This changes things, Marquez said, reviewing the preliminary findings. With this evidence, we might be able to get warrants for Cruz's financial records, his communications. How long would that process take? I asked. She sighed. Realistically, weeks, maybe months. Especially given the political connections documented here. We'd need to involve internal affairs, possibly the FBI. Michael doesn't have weeks, I reminded her. And neither do the other people Cruz is terrorizing. Which brings us back to your plan, James said. Though with this new information, perhaps we should reconsider the approach. We spent the next hour refining the operation, incorporating what we'd learned from Gloria's files. The basic premise remained the same. I would meet with Cruz, ostensibly to discuss the business opportunity I'd proposed earlier. But now we had specific names, specific connections we could leverage to pressure him into incriminating statements. By mid-afternoon, everything was in place. The location, a private dining room at an upscale restaurant, had been secured and wired for both audio and video. A team of undercover officers would be positioned throughout the establishment. Officer Diaz would pose as my personal assistant, keeping her directly at my side. I returned to the hospital for a few hours before the meeting, sitting with Michael, drawing strength from his presence, even in unconsciousness. I'm facing him tonight, I told my son, holding his unresponsive hand. The man who sent someone to hurt you. The man who's been threatening our family. I'm not afraid anymore, Michael. Whatever happens, know that I did this for you. For us. For the chance to rebuild what we've lost. As I prepared to leave, the day nurse entered to check Michael's vitals. She smiled as she worked. His numbers are continuing to improve, she noted. And look, he's starting to trigger the ventilator occasionally. That means he's trying to breathe on his own. A very good sign. Hope surged within me. Do you think he might wake up soon? It's possible, she said cautiously. The brain is mysterious. Recovery happens in its own time. But these are definitely positive developments. I leaned down and kissed Michael's forehead. Keep fighting, I whispered. I'll be back soon. James was waiting outside with Officer Diaz and Detective Marquez for our final briefing before the operation. Cruz confirmed the meeting, Marquez reported. 7 p.m. at the Continental, as arranged. He's agreed to come alone, though we expect he'll have men positioned nearby. So will we, James added. Both police and my security team. Every entrance and exit covered. Remember, Marquez cautioned, the goal is to get him to incriminate himself on record. Specific acknowledgement of the attacks, the threats, the illegal lending operation. Anything that gives us enough for an arrest warrant. I nodded, feeling strangely calm. I understand. And if at any point you feel unsafe, Officer Diaz added, use the panic phrase. We'll move in immediately. The Continental was one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, occupying the top floor of a downtown high-rise with panoramic views of the skyline. We arrived 30 minutes early, allowing the technical team to make final checks on the surveillance equipment hidden in the private dining room. I wore a simple but elegant black dress, powerful yet understated, with a small microphone concealed in the pearl necklace James had provided. Officer Diaz, dressed as my assistant in a conservative suit, remained within arm's reach at all times. At precisely 7 p.m., Cruz arrived. Like our previous meeting, he was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, his bearing confident but not arrogant. He looked like any other successful businessman enjoying a high-end dinner, not like a violent criminal who had ordered attacks on my family. Mrs. Winters, he greeted me, taking the seat across from me at the small table. A pleasure to see you again, despite the circumstances. Mr. Cruz, I replied coolly. Thank you for coming. He smiled, that same perfect, predatory smile. Your press conference yesterday was quite impactful. You've become quite the public figure. Visibility has its advantages, I said, as does having a platform to speak truth to power. Cruz signaled the waiting server for wine, his movements unhurried, controlled. Truth is a relative concept, Mrs. Winters, as is power. Speaking of which, I received your payment. A gesture of good faith, I assume? A settlement of my son's debt. I corrected. Nothing more. And yet here we are, meeting again. He studied me as the server poured 2 glasses of red wine. I confess I'm curious about your foundation. The investigative fund you mentioned in your press conference sounds particularly ambitious. Here was my opening. It's already producing results. 7 of your former clients have come forward with detailed accounts of your operation, quite consistent in their descriptions of your methods. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or concern. People say many things when they believe they've been wronged. Rarely are these accounts objective. These seemed quite objective to me, especially when accompanied by documentation. Records of loans, payment schedules, transcripts of threatening messages, even hospital records from those who suffered the consequences of late payments.
Cruz sipped his wine, considering.
And what do you intend to do with this information? That depends, I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. I had thought to turn everything over to law enforcement, but then I recalled our earlier conversation about business opportunities, about mutually beneficial arrangements. Interest sharpened his features. Go on. Your operation is impressive in its efficiency, if not its ethics. The Foundation needs someone who understands financial systems from both sides, legitimate and otherwise. Someone who can help identify vulnerabilities, create safeguards. You're offering me a position? He sounded amused. After everything that's happened? I'm offering you an alternative, I clarified. A path away from activities that have placed you in the crosshairs of both law enforcement and public scrutiny. Cruz leaned back, studying me with new appreciation. You continue to surprise me, Mrs. Winters. Most people in your position would be consumed by vengeance, not proposing business arrangements. Vengeance is emotional. This is strategic. I leaned forward slightly. But to move forward, we need to address what's happened. The attacks on my son. The attempt to access his hospital room yesterday. The threatening message you sent to my phone. He raised an eyebrow. Allegations without evidence are dangerous, Mrs. Winters. Especially when made against someone with my resources. I don't need evidence for a conversation, Mr. Cruz. Only for a courtroom. I took a calculated risk. Besides, we both know the truth. You accepted my payment, then immediately sent Reyes to ensure Michael couldn't testify against you or Vanessa. A flicker of surprise crossed his face at the mention of Reyes's name. Good. He hadn't expected me to know his enforcer's identity. Anton Reyes makes his own decisions, Cruz said carefully. If he attempted to access your son's room, that was not at my direction. And the text message from your phone? A friendly warning. Nothing more. We were dancing around the subject, neither willing to make explicit statements. I needed to push harder. Let me be direct, Mr. Cruz. I know about your expansion plans, the political connections, the real estate developments, the banking aspirations. Your operation is at a critical juncture, poised between the criminal world you've dominated and the legitimate one you're trying to enter. That got his attention. His eyes narrowed fractionally. You seem remarkably well-informed. Information is the foundation of power, I replied, using his own concepts against him. And I now have considerable information about your organization, your methods, and your future plans. From Vanessa Pierce Winters, he deduced. Or perhaps her mother. I didn't confirm or deny. What matters is that I have it, and how I choose to use it. Cruz's cordial mask slipped slightly, revealing the calculated mind beneath. And what would prevent you from using this information against me, even if we reach some arrangement? The same thing that prevents you from eliminating me despite multiple opportunities, I answered. Mutual self-interest. Dead lottery winners generate intensive investigations. Missing Foundation directors even more so. He actually smiled at that, a genuine expression of appreciation. You understand the game better than most, Mrs. Winters. It's not a game to me, I countered. It's survival. For myself and for my son. Ah, yes, Michael. Cruz's expression darkened slightly. An unfortunate situation. Had he and his wife simply been honest about their financial position, perhaps things would have unfolded differently. They feared you, I pointed out. With good reason, apparently. Fear is a necessary component of certain business models, he replied smoothly. But not the only component. I value reliability, predictability. Your son and his wife proved unpredictable. By trying to murder me instead of asking for help directly? Precisely. Cruz sipped his wine thoughtfully. A desperate, foolish plan. One that has created complications for everyone involved. I saw my opportunity and took it, including the complication of silencing Michael permanently when he became a liability. Cruz's eyes hardened. As I said, allegations without evidence are dangerous. Then let me present evidence, I said, reaching for my phone. Phone records showing calls between your number and Reyes's the night before the attack on Michael. Security footage of the press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. the next day, giving me precious little time to prepare. I spent most of the night at Michael's bedside in the ICU, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest, artificially maintained by the ventilator. His face was pale beneath the bruises, younger somehow in unconsciousness, reminding me of the little boy I had once rocked to sleep. If you're still following my story, hit subscribe now. Have you ever had to make a public stand against someone who wronged you? Tell me about your experience in the comments below. A nurse came in periodically to check his vitals, her movements efficient but gentle. During one such visit around 3 a.m., she paused beside me. "You should try to get some rest, Mrs. Winters," she said kindly. "There's a cot in the family room down the hall." I shook my head. "I need to be here if he wakes up." "We'll call you immediately if there's any change," she assured me. "But you won't be any good to him if you collapse from exhaustion." She was right, of course. The events of the past days had drained me completely. I reluctantly agreed to lie down for a few hours, but only after extracting a promise that they would wake me at the slightest change in Michael's condition. I didn't expect to sleep, but my body had other ideas. The moment I stretched out on the narrow cot, exhaustion pulled me under into a deep, dreamless void. A hand on my shoulder woke me with a start. I blinked up at James, momentarily disoriented. "What time is it?" I asked, my voice rough with sleep. "Almost 9, he replied. "I'm sorry to wake you, but there are developments we need to discuss." I sat up quickly. "Michael?" "No change," he assured me. "Stable but critical, according to the nurses." Relief and disappointment warred within me. No change meant no improvement, but also no deterioration. "What developments?" I asked, running a hand through my disheveled hair. James sat beside me on the cot. The wire transfer to Cruz was completed at 7 a.m. $2 million as agreed. He paused. "And we've received a response." I tensed. "What kind of response?" "An email." He handed me his tablet. "To your foundation's new public address." The message was brief and to the point. "Mrs. Winters, payment received with appreciation. Consider your son's debt satisfied in full. Regarding your business proposition, I remain intrigued. Perhaps we could discuss further details at a more convenient time, once your family situation stabilizes. My sincere hope for your son's recovery.
VC.
I read it twice, noting the polite phrasing, the careful ambiguity. He doesn't acknowledge ordering the attack. "No," James agreed. "And we may never prove he did. The inmate who stabbed Michael was found dead in his cell this morning. Apparent suicide." My hands tightened on the tablet. How convenient. Indeed. But there's more. James took the tablet back, opening another email. This came from Vanessa's mother, Gloria. This message was longer, more emotional. "Eleanor, I've just learned of Michael's condition. Despite our differences, I am devastated by this turn of events. Whatever has transpired between our families, Michael is still my son-in-law, and I cannot stand by while he suffers. I wish to offer any assistance I can provide. Financial, medical consultations, whatever is needed. I also have information that may be relevant to your situation with Cruz. Information Vanessa shared with me before, everything. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. This is not the time for pride or division. Gloria Hamilton Pierce." I snorted in disbelief. Now she wants to help? After everything her daughter did? "It could be genuine concern," James suggested. "Or it could be another angle we haven't considered." "Such as?" He hesitated. "If Michael doesn't survive, the investigation changes. Attempted murder becomes murder. Vanessa's situation becomes much more dire. Gloria might be trying to position herself, and by extension, her daughter, more favorably. The thought chilled me. Michael's death would certainly simplify things for Vanessa. No conflicting testimony, no possibility of him turning against her to save himself. We can't trust her, I decided. Not yet.
But
I reread the message. She claims to have information about Cruz. That might be useful. We could arrange a meeting. Somewhere public, with security. I nodded slowly. After the press conference. Let's see how Cruz reacts to that first. James looked concerned. About the press conference. Are you sure you want to go through with it? It's a significant escalation. That's precisely the point, I replied, standing and stretching my stiff muscles. Cruz thinks he's won. He got his money, silenced a potential witness, and now he's waiting for things to blow over. I intend to show him how wrong he is. James sighed but didn't argue further. Detective Marquez will be here at noon to discuss security arrangements. And I've brought you a change of clothes. He gestured to a garment bag hanging on the door. Your penthouse is still considered unsafe. Thank you. I squeezed his arm gratefully. For everything. After he left, I showered in the small bathroom attached to the family room, the hot water washing away some of the physical. The morning of the press conference dawned bright and clear, sunlight streaming through the hospital window where I'd spent another night watching over Michael. He was more alert today, the fog of confusion gradually lifting as his strength returned. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about his physical recovery, though the missing weeks in his memory remained a blank canvas. If you've stayed with me through this whole journey, hit subscribe now. Have you ever had to publicly stand up against someone who wronged you? What gave you the courage? Tell me in the comments below. You should go home and change before the press conference, Michael suggested as I straightened my wrinkled clothes. You can't face the media, looking like you slept in a chair. I smiled at his concern. Is that your subtle way of saying I look terrible? No, he protested with a hint of his old humor. Just that you deserve to look your best for your moment. This is important, Mom. He was right, of course. This wasn't just another media appearance. This was the public acknowledgement that justice was being served, that Vanessa had confessed, that Cruz was facing charges, that the system could work if pushed hard enough. All right, I conceded. But I'll be back immediately afterward. Michael nodded, his expression growing serious. I've been thinking about what you told me. About the foundation. About everything. And I prompted when he hesitated. And I want to help. I know I need to earn your trust again. I know I need to prove myself. But when I'm well enough, I want to be part of what you're building. His eyes held a determination I hadn't seen in years. I want to use what happened to us to help others avoid the same mistakes. The sincerity in his voice touched me deeply. Whether his memory ever returned or not, this version of my son seemed genuinely committed to a better path. We'll talk more about it when you're stronger, I promised. For now, focus on healing. James was waiting outside Michael's room, ready to escort me home to prepare for the press conference. Officer Diaz remained on duty, vigilant despite Cruz's imprisonment and Vanessa's confession. The threat from Cruz's organization still loomed, a shadow we couldn't ignore. How are you feeling about today? James asked as we drove through the morning traffic toward my penthouse. Validated, I replied after considering the question. This plea deal confirms what we've known all along, that Vanessa deliberately tried to murder me for my money. And relieved about Michael's apparent innocence in the poisoning plot? I glanced at him. You sound skeptical. James shrugged slightly. Convenient timing with his memory loss. And Vanessa has every reason to protect him, even now. The evidence supports her claim, I reminded him. No fingerprints on the vial except hers. No incriminating searches on his devices. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, James countered gently. But I hope for your sake that she's telling the truth. So did I. The alternative, that my son had known about and supported a plan to murder me, was too painful to contemplate, especially now that we were rebuilding our relationship. The penthouse felt strangely unfamiliar after so many nights at the hospital. I showered quickly, washing away the hospital's antiseptic scent, then dressed in a tailored blue suit that projected confidence and authority. As I fastened a simple pearl necklace, a replacement for the one that had contained the hidden microphone during my meeting with Cruz, I studied my reflection. The woman who gazed back at me bore little resemblance to the invisible Eleanor Winters of 2 months ago. This woman stood straighter, her eyes clear and direct, her expression composed but determined. This woman had faced betrayal, violence, and manipulation, and emerged stronger, more purposeful. "Ready," James called from the living room. "Almost," I replied, applying a final touch of lipstick. One last look in the mirror, one deep breath, and I was prepared to face the world again. The district attorney's office was crowded with reporters when we arrived, the room buzzing with anticipation. DA Sullivan greeted me warmly, expressing both admiration for my courage and gratitude for my cooperation throughout the investigation. "Your foundation's work has already identified 7 more victims of Cruz's operation," he told me as we waited for the press conference to begin. "That evidence strengthens our case significantly. Will it be enough to ensure he stays imprisoned?" I asked. "His resources, his connections. The recording from your meeting, combined with Vanessa's testimony and the financial evidence, makes this the strongest case we've ever built against him," Sullivan assured me. "His political connections are already distancing themselves. The empire is crumbling, Mrs. Winters." Detective Marquez joined us, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her since this ordeal began. "Mrs. Pierce Winters signed the final plea agreement this morning," she reported. 20 years, with the possibility of parole after 15. Full confession, full cooperation with the ongoing investigation into Cruz's organization. "And she maintains that Michael knew nothing about the poison?" I confirmed. Marquez nodded. "She's been consistent on that point. According to her statement, he believed the investment trust was legitimate. Manipulative, perhaps, but not murderous." Relief flooded through me again. Whether born of genuine innocence or Vanessa's protective instinct, this account offered Michael a path forward, a chance to rebuild his life without the shadow of attempted murder hanging over him. At precisely 10 a.m., we took our places at the podium. DA Sullivan spoke first, outlining the charges against Vanessa, the terms of her plea agreement, and the ongoing case against Cruz. His words were measured, factual, professional, the language of justice rather than vengeance. Then it was my turn. I stepped to the microphone, momentarily dazzled by the camera flashes, then focused on the message I wanted to convey. 2 months ago, I was an invisible woman who won the lottery. I began, echoing my first press conference. Today, I stand before you as the founder of the Second Chance Foundation, an organization born from tragedy but dedicated to hope. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on me. Vanessa Pierce Winters' confession brings a measure of closure to a painful chapter in my life. Her admission that she attempted to poison me confirms what the evidence has shown all along. But today isn't about looking backward at what was done. It's about looking forward to what can be prevented. I gestured to the Foundation's logo displayed on the screen behind me. Since its launch, the Second Chance Foundation has already identified dozens of victims of financial exploitation similar to what my family experienced. We've provided legal support, financial counseling, and personal security to individuals targeted by predatory lenders like Victor Cruz. We've established partnerships with banking institutions to create better safeguards. And we've begun working with legislators to strengthen laws against exploitation. Pride infused my voice as I continued, describing the Foundation's early successes, its growing network of support, its commitment to transforming victims into advocates. The woman who stood before you weeks ago was angry, hurt, seeking justice. I acknowledged. The woman standing before you today is still determined to see justice served, but is equally committed to creating positive change from painful experience. I paused, gathering myself for the more personal part of my statement. My son, Michael Winters, is recovering from the brutal attack he suffered while in custody. Though he still faces a long journey to full health, I am grateful that he will have the opportunity to rebuild his life. The evidence, supported by Vanessa Pierce Winters' confession, indicates that while he was involved in financial deceptions, he had no knowledge of the attempt on my life. The cameras clicked rapidly, capturing my expression as I spoke about Michael. As a mother, I choose to focus on healing and renewal, both for my son and for myself. The Second Chance Foundation will be part of that healing process, offering Michael the opportunity to transform his mistakes into meaningful contributions. I straightened, addressing my final comments directly to the cameras. To those who are currently invisible, vulnerable, exploited, you are not alone. Your voices matter. Your experiences matter. And the Second Chance Foundation stands ready to help you reclaim your power, your dignity, your future. I stepped back from the podium, signaling the end of my statement. The room erupted with questions, reporters calling my name, seeking more details about Michael, about Vanessa, about Cruz. DA Sullivan managed the Q&A session, fielding most inquiries himself and directing only the most appropriate ones to me. One question cut through the noise, asked by a veteran reporter whose expression suggested genuine curiosity rather than sensationalism. Mrs. Winters, given everything you've been through, the betrayal, the violence, the public scrutiny, do you regret winning the lottery? The room quieted, waiting for my response. It was a question I'd asked myself many times during the darkest moments of this ordeal. No, I said finally, my voice firm. I don't regret the lottery win. I regret that it revealed such darkness in those I trusted. But without that revelation, I might have lived the rest of my life in blissful ignorance, never knowing the truth about my family, never finding my voice, never creating the foundation that might help others avoid similar fates. I smiled slightly. Sometimes the most painful truths are also the most valuable. They strip away illusions and force us to build something real in their place. After the press conference concluded, James and I escaped through a side exit, avoiding the reporters still clamoring for additional comments. In the car, I checked my phone to find several messages from Detective Marquez, all variations of "call me immediately." My heart raced as I dialed her number. Had something happened to Michael? Had Cruz's organization made another move? "Eleanor," she answered on the first ring, her voice tense. "Where are you?" "In the car with James, heading back to the hospital." "What's wrong?" "There's been a development. Michael's memory, it's returning. Fragments, but significant ones. He's asking for you." Relief flooded through me. That's wonderful news. What is he remembering? There was a hesitation on the line. "It's better if he tells you himself. Just be prepared, Eleanor. Memory recovery isn't always a straight line, and sometimes what returns first isn't what we expect or hope for." The warning sent a chill through me. "We'll be there in 15 minutes. James accelerated, weaving through traffic with focused determination. Neither of us spoke during the drive, both absorbed in our own thoughts about what Michael might have remembered and what it might mean for our carefully reconstructed reality. When we arrived at the hospital, Detective Marquez was waiting in the corridor outside Michael's room, her expression grave. "What's happened?" I demanded. "Is he all right?" "Physically, yes," she assured me. "But about an hour ago, he became agitated. Said he was having flashes of memory, fragments of conversations, arguments with Vanessa. He asked to speak with you immediately. Did he tell you what he remembered?" She shook her head. "He refused to discuss it with anyone but you." "But Eleanor," his demeanor changed dramatically. "Whatever he's recalled, it's significant." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm ready." Officer Diaz opened the door for me, then resumed her position outside. Michael was sitting up in bed, his face pale but alert, his expression troubled. When he saw me, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, shame, fear. I couldn't tell which. "Mom," he said, his voice stronger than it had been since waking. "We need to talk." I moved to his bedside, taking the chair next to him. "Detective Marquez says you're remembering things." He nodded, his hands twisting the sheet nervously. "Flashes. Pieces. Like looking through a broken window, but the images are sharper now. Conversations. Arguments. Plans." My heart pounded painfully. "What plans, Michael?" He met my gaze directly, his eyes swimming with tears. I knew, Mom. Not everything, not the poison. I swear I never knew she would try to kill you. But I knew we were manipulating you. The investment trust, the financial advice, the sudden affection, it was all calculated. All designed to gain control of your money. Though I had suspected as much, hearing the confirmation from his own lips sent a wave of pain through me. The debts were real, he continued, the words tumbling out now. Cruz was real. The desperation was real. But the solution, using you, lying to you, that was a choice. Our choice. My choice. I sat very still, absorbing this. Tell me everything you remember, Michael. From the beginning. He closed his eyes briefly, concentrating. After you won, Vanessa saw an opportunity. We were already in debt. The house, credit cards, some gambling issues she'd hidden from me. Then I made it worse with bad investments, trying to create the lifestyle she wanted. His voice grew bitter. I was weak, desperate to keep her happy, to maintain the image we'd created. When you won the lottery, Vanessa immediately started planning how to access your money. I told myself it was for mutual benefit, that we'd help you manage your new wealth, secure your future and ours simultaneously. But that's not how it developed, I prompted when he paused.
No.
Michael's expression twisted with shame. As our debts grew, especially after Cruz entered the picture, the plans became more manipulative. Vanessa suggested moving you into our home to isolate you from outside advisors.
I went along with it.
We directed you toward financial experts who were actually working for us. Everything was designed to funnel your money through structures we controlled. The calculation of it all was breathtaking. And the party? The celebration? Vanessa's idea. A public event where you'd be emotional, grateful, vulnerable. The perfect setting to present the investment trust documents for your signature. His hands clenched the sheet. But I never knew about the poison, Mom. I swear on my life. That was Vanessa's secret plan, her insurance policy if the manipulation failed. I studied his face, searching for deception, finding only anguish. Did you know she'd been slowly poisoning me before the party? The low doses in my food. Horror dawned in his eyes.
What?
No.
God, no.
I knew you'd been ill, but I thought it was stress, adjustment to the changes. He shook his head violently. Is that true? She was poisoning you the whole time you lived with us.
His shock seemed genuine.
According to the medical tests, yes. Low doses of thallium, building up to what would have been a fatal amount at the party. Michael slumped back against the pillows, his face ashen. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. The financial manipulation was bad enough, but murder? I could never. His voice broke. She must have done it when I wasn't home, when I was meeting with Cruz or the financial advisors. Cruz, I repeated. Tell me about those meetings. Michael's expression darkened.
He was terrifying.
Polite, elegant, but with this underlying threat in every word. The interest kept compounding. 300,000 became 600,000, then 1 million, then more. Each time we missed a payment or could only make a partial one, the penalties were severe. Did he threaten you physically? Not directly. Never directly. But he would mention how unfortunate it would be if something happened to our beautiful home. Or how accidents can occur so unexpectedly. The message was clear. I nodded, remembering Cruz's similar conversational style during our meeting. And when did you start planning the investment trust scheme? Michael sighed heavily. About a month after you won. We were getting desperate. Cruz had given us a deadline, the full amount, plus penalties, by the day after the party. Vanessa said we needed to accelerate our plan, that the gentle manipulation wasn't working fast enough. Because I was setting up the foundation, I realized. Moving money beyond your reach. Yes. Shame colored his features again. Vanessa was furious when you started talking about charitable trusts, irrevocable structures. She said we needed to act before you gave away our future. The phrase hit me like a physical blow, exactly what I'd overheard Vanessa saying that night in their bedroom. The night that had first alerted me to their true intentions. And you went along with all of it, I said, my voice flat. I did. He didn't try to defend himself. I told myself it was just financial restructuring, just family helping family. I convinced myself you'd benefit too, better management, better security. But the truth was, I was desperate and weak and willing to betray my own mother to solve problems I'd created. We sat in silence for several moments, the weight of his confession hanging between us. Then Michael spoke again, his voice smaller. I understand if you can't forgive this. If you need to withdraw your offer about the foundation. If you want nothing more to do with me. He looked up, tears streaming down his face. But I needed you to know the truth. All of it. Or, at least, all that I've remembered so far. I studied my son. This man who had conspired against me, manipulated me, yet drawn the line at murder. This man who now sat before me, broken by his own actions, offering no excuses, no deflections. Why tell me this now? I asked finally. Vanessa's confession protected you. Your memory loss gave you a perfect excuse. You could have maintained your innocence indefinitely. Because I can't build anything real on a foundation of lies, he replied simply. Not a relationship with you, not a role in the foundation, not a new life. I've spent years taking the easy way out, the coward's path. I don't want to live that way anymore. The honesty in his voice resonated with something deep inside me. How many times in my own life had I chosen the easy path? Accepted invisibility rather than demanding recognition? Settled for scraps of affection rather than requiring respect? The offer to work with the foundation still stands, I said after a long moment. But with conditions. Full disclosure to the board about your past actions. Regular sessions with a therapist to address the underlying issues that led to these choices. A probationary period during which you'll have no financial responsibilities or authority. Hope flickered in his eyes. You'd still give me a chance? After everything I've admitted. The foundation is called Second Chance for a reason, Michael. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze directly. But understand this. It is your final chance. There will not be a third. He nodded solemnly. I understand. And I'll earn your trust again, Mom. I promise. Don't promise, I advised.
Prove.
Day by day, choice by choice. As I left Michael's room, Detective Marquez was waiting, her expression questioning. He remembered his role in the financial manipulation. I confirmed, but maintains he knew nothing about the poisoning attempt. Do you believe him? I considered the question carefully.
Yes.
The shock in his eyes when I mentioned the earlier poisoning attempts seemed genuine. And it aligns with the evidence. Vanessa's fingerprints alone on the vial, the research conducted only on her devices. Marquez nodded. For what it's worth, I agree. His involvement appears limited to the financial schemes, not the murder plot. She hesitated. Will you tell the DA about his recovered memories? Yes, I decided. Full transparency. Michael will face the legal consequences of his actions, whatever they may be. That's part of earning a second chance. She squeezed my arm gently. You're doing the right thing, Eleanor. For him and for yourself. The next weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Michael's health improved steadily, his memory continuing to return in fragments. Each recollection he shared with me voluntarily, holding nothing back, a painful but necessary part of rebuilding trust between us. The legal machinery ground forward. Cruz's case moved toward trial, his attempts to secure bail repeatedly denied as more evidence emerged from the Foundation's investigative work. Vanessa began serving her sentence, refusing all visitors except her mother and her attorney. Michael faced charges related to the financial deception, ultimately accepting a plea deal that included probation, community service, and restitution. Through it all, the Foundation flourished. We expanded from a single office to 3 locations across the state, with plans for national growth. Our programs evolved based on the needs we encountered: legal aid for victims of financial exploitation, security services for those facing threats, counseling for families torn apart by betrayal and manipulation. And gradually, a new normal emerged from the chaos. A life I had never imagined for myself, visible, purposeful, impactful. 6 months after the fateful party, I stood at the podium again, this time at the official grand opening of the Second Chance Foundation's headquarters. The restored historic building gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, its facade emblazoned with our logo, a phoenix rising from ashes, wings spread wide. When I won the lottery, I began, addressing the assembled crowd of supporters, partners, and media. I thought the money itself was the blessing. I was wrong. The true gift was the revelation of truth, painful as it was, and the opportunity to build something meaningful from that knowledge. In the front row, Michael sat with James and Detective Marquez, his face thinner but healthier than before, his expression attentive. Behind them, dozens of Foundation clients, people who had found their way to us after facing their own betrayals, their own exploitation, their own moments of painful truth. The Second Chance Foundation exists because invisibility is the ally of exploitation, because silence enables abuse, because manipulation thrives in isolation. I gestured to the building behind me. Within these walls, the invisible become visible. The silenced find their voices. The isolated discover community. I continued, outlining our accomplishments, our goals, our vision for the future. As I spoke, I noticed a familiar face enter at the back of the gathering, Gloria Hamilton Pierce, elegant as always but somehow diminished, standing alone. Our eyes met briefly across the crowd. I gave her a slight nod of acknowledgement, which she returned with equal restraint. Our relationship remained complicated. She visited Vanessa regularly, reported on her progress, maintained that her daughter had been driven to desperate acts by circumstance rather than character. But Gloria had also become an unexpected ally in certain ways, using her social connections to open doors for the Foundation, providing insights into the world of privilege that had previously been closed to me. Neither friend nor enemy, she occupied a complex middle ground, much like Michael himself. In conclusion, I said, returning my attention to the audience, the Second Chance Foundation is built on a simple premise that our worst moments need not define us. That betrayal can lead to renewal. That exploitation can give rise to empowerment. That poison, in the right circumstances, can become medicine. The crowd rose in applause as I cut the ceremonial ribbon, officially opening the headquarters. As people filed inside for tours and refreshments, Michael approached, his step still slightly unsteady, but improving daily. "Impressive speech," he said, genuine pride in his voice. Dad would have been blown away. The mention of Arthur, my ex-husband, surprised me. "You think so?" Michael nodded. "He always said you had untapped potential, that you were playing small in life." Ironic coming from the man who left me for his dental hygienist, I observed dryly. "True." Michael smiled slightly. "But he wasn't entirely wrong, was he? You were always capable of this. The Foundation, the advocacy, the leadership. It just took extraordinary circumstances to bring it out." I considered this as we walked slowly toward the building. Perhaps. Or perhaps I simply needed to become visible, to myself as much as to others. Inside, the headquarters buzzed with activity. Staff members guided visitors through the various departments, explaining our programs, our success stories, our future initiatives. On the wall of the main lobby hung a large mosaic created by Foundation clients, hundreds of small photographs forming the image of a rising sun. "Mrs. Winters," called a voice behind me. I turned to find Detective Marquez approaching, her expression serious. "Do you have a moment?" "Of course." I excused myself from Michael and followed her to a quiet corner. "I wanted to tell you in person," she said without preamble. "Cruz was found dead in his cell this morning. Apparent heart attack, though the investigation is ongoing." The news hit me with unexpected force. Natural causes? Marquez's expression was carefully neutral. Possibly, or possibly not. He had enemies both inside and outside the prison. People who stood to lose considerably if he testified as part of a plea deal, which his attorneys had recently begun negotiating. I absorbed this information, my feelings more complex than I had anticipated. Cruz had been a monster in many ways, predatory, manipulative, violent. Yet in our final confrontation, I had recognized something in him that mirrored aspects of myself. strategic thinking, adaptability, and understanding of power dynamics. What does this mean for the larger case?
I asked.
It complicates things, Marquez admitted. Without Cruz's testimony, certain connections will be harder to prove. But the Foundation's investigative work has provided enough evidence to continue pursuing his lieutenants, his political allies, his financial enablers. I nodded, resolute. Then we'll intensify those efforts. Cruz was just one head of the Hydra. The system that allowed him to flourish remains. Exactly why I wanted to tell you directly, Marquez said with approval. This isn't the end of the Foundation's work. In many ways, it's just the beginning. As Marquez left to speak with James about security implications, I found myself drawn to the quiet meditation garden at the center of the building, a peaceful oasis designed for clients and staff alike. Sitting on a stone bench beside a small fountain, I reflected on the long, strange journey that had brought me here. The lottery win that had made me visible, the family betrayal that had nearly killed me, the poison that had instead strengthened me. The Foundation born from tragedy, the sun tentatively finding redemption, the future unfolding in ways I could never have imagined. Mrs. Winters? A soft voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to see a woman about my age, hesitant but determined, clutching a Foundation brochure in her hands. Yes, I smiled encouragingly. Please join me. She sat carefully, her posture suggesting years of making herself small, unobtrusive. Your story, what you shared in your speech, it resonated with me. I've been invisible too, for decades. Tell me, I invited gently. She did, her story pouring out in halting phrases at first, then with increasing confidence. Financial abuse by her son-in-law, isolation from friends and community, manipulation that had left her doubting her own perceptions, her own worth. I listened without interruption, recognizing in her experience echoes of my own journey, and those of countless others who had found their way to the Foundation. I didn't think anyone would believe me, she finished, wiping away tears. I didn't think anyone would help. I believe you, I said simply. And helping people like you is exactly why this Foundation exists. Relief washed over her features. What's the first step? I stood, offering my hand. The first step is acknowledging your own value, your right to be seen, to be heard, to be respected. The rest follows from there. As I led her toward the Client Services Department, where trained advocates would begin the process of reclaiming her life, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was why I had survived the poison champagne. This was why I had fought back against Cruz. This was why I had created the Foundation. Not just for justice or vengeance or even protection, but for transformation of systems, of lives, of futures. Later that evening, as the grand opening celebration wound down, I found myself alone in my office overlooking the city lights. On my desk sat a framed photograph, not of family or friends, but of the champagne glass from that fateful night, the one I had switched with Vanessa's. Our forensics team had photographed it before it was taken as evidence. A strange keepsake, perhaps, but a powerful reminder of the moment everything changed, when the invisible woman became visible, when the victim became the victor, when the poison became the cure. My phone chimed with a text from Michael. Heading home. Doctor's orders. Proud of you today, Mom. Truly. I smiled, typing back. Rest well. Big day for all of us. As I prepared to leave, I caught my reflection in the window, backlit against the city skyline, my silhouette clear and defined against the darkness beyond. No longer invisible, no longer overlooked, no longer underestimated. The woman who had won the lottery had found something far more valuable than money. She had found herself, and that, I reflected as I turned off the lights and closed the door behind me, was the true fortune, the one no one could ever take away.